Chapter 836. If you kill him, I will definitely kill you. Yi Rou's words were sonorous and powerful. It did not make sense to make such a threat before the duel. However, according to Yi Rou's usual character and style of doing things, it was not strange at all. Besides, the last time the Divine Dragon battled with the Azure Dragon Mo Qingdi, it was a friendly duel, but the Divine Dragon broke the tendons of the Azure Dragon Mo Qingdi's hand, making him wish he was dead. Who asked this old fellow to have such a record? The mountain winds howled and sand filled the sky. Hearing Yi Rou's words, the Divine Dragon's expression did not change, nor did he show any anger. He looked at Fang Yan with a smile and said, "You have a good wife, it is a great blessing in life." Fang Yan nodded and said, "You don't have to be envious, it's useless to be envious anyway. At your age it's probably not easy for you to find a wife, right?" "Ah." The Divine Dragon laughed out loud and said, "That makes sense, it really makes sense. At my age it's probably not easy for me to find a wife, let alone a good wife in the heavenly Tao realm." The husband and wife ganged up to bully his master, an old man who had never even married a wife in his life. This was unacceptable to Gong Sun Qi. He could not be angry at his savior Fang Yan, so he targeted Fang Yan's wife Yi Rou. "See, straight men are so cute. What a joke. If Fang Yan is killed by my master, will you be able to avenge Fang Yan? Why do you think you are better than Fang Yan?" Gong Sun Qi sneered. When he spoke, the direction of his nostrils indicated the target of his attack. Yi Rou glanced at Gong Sun Qi and said, "What right do you have to speak? What do you mean? If you were slightly more powerful, would you still need your master to fight Fang Yan personally? Yi Rou, do you dare to accept my challenge?" Gong Sun Qi gnashed his teeth, wishing he could cut Yi Rou into two pieces right there and then. He really felt pity for Fang Yan. Such a good man, handsome, charming, humorous, skilled in martial arts and loyal. How could he fall into the hands of such a woman? How could he be happy in this life? "I dare not," Yi Rou refused on the spot. "I don't compete with people of lower realms." Gong Sun Qi drew his sword on the spot, ready to fight to the death with Yi Rou. "Gong Sun Qi." The dragon god tried his best to stop him. "Stop messing around. Master, she's going too far." Gong Sun Qi roared with a red face and neck. "What's wrong with being ridiculed because your cultivation isn't good enough? Only by knowing shame and courage can one become a master of a generation." The dragon god worked hard and did not hesitate to stab his disciple in the chest. Gong Sun Qi really wanted to go down the mountain. There was no way to continue watching this fight. The dragon god looked at Gong Sun Qi and said, "When you reach the top, all the mountains are small. The most important thing is the process of climbing. When you reach the top, there is no one around you, no one to talk to. How lonely and helpless will that be? When you can't see the stars and the moon in front of you, how will you have the direction to chase? How will you have the motivation to chase? It's a happy thing to have an opponent to defeat and surpass. How boring is it to have never been defeated in life?" Gong Sun Qi's face turned serious. He bowed respectfully to his master and said, "Master, your disciple understands. Your disciple will definitely focus on cultivation and climb to the heavenly realm in the future." The dragon god nodded to his disciple and said, "You have the talent, it's only a matter of time for you to climb to the heavenly realm, but you lack training and the hardships of putting yourself at death's door. This will hinder your climbing to the heavenly realm." The dragon god pointed at Fang Yan and said, "As the saying goes, the children of the poor become responsible early." Although Fang Yan has experienced many setbacks and challenges, it has honed his temperament and aura. That's why he entered the realm at such a young age. You are my disciple. This helped you in the early stages, allowing you to improve quickly and have a solid foundation. But it also hurt you in the later stages. You can only progress slowly and you lack the surprise of reaching the heavens in one step. Fang Yan was a little unhappy. He thought, this old man doesn't even know how to praise someone. Who are you calling a child of the poor? My family was rich back then, okay? Now my family is even richer, okay? Gong Sun Qi was deeply inspired. He looked at the dragon god and the dragon god with sincerity and said, "A teacher for a day, a teacher for life. To be able to become master's disciple is the greatest fortune of my life. No matter what, I will continue to work hard. Even if it's a little slow, it doesn't matter. I think one day I will climb to the heavenly realm. Your disciple will definitely not embarrass master." The dragon god grinned and said, "With these words of yours, our relationship as master and disciple has not been in vain." The dragon god seemed to be bidding farewell to his disciple. After he was done, he looked at Fang Yan and said, I haven't moved in a long time and I don't usually have the thought of exercising with great fanfare. So, in this battle, I hope you can let me have a taste of failure. Fists and legs have no eyes, killing or mutilating depends on your means. The dragon god's voice was very calm, and when he spoke there was a faint smile on his face. However, it gave off a tough feeling that was hard to ignore. The dragon god, usually looked low-key and amiable, like an approachable little old man. Only at this moment did he reveal the aura of a heavenly Dao realm in his fangs. Killing or mutilating depends on your means. This sentence was very straightforward, and it was also very magnanimous. It was 1,000 times more magnanimous than Yi Rose. If you kill him, I will definitely kill you. The dragon god was a domineering person who saw through life and death and was willing to give up everything, while Yi Rose was a domineering person who cherished him excessively and wanted to make him stay. Both were very precious. Fang Yan nodded and said, to be honest, I don't blame you for breaking the old drunkard's tendons, because if I had one today I would have done the same to you. The dragon god laughed again, looked at Fang Yan and said, you're really an interesting guy, I'm full of expectations for you. The wind is cold in the high mountains, are we going to start? If this goes on, this old man's body won't be able to take it anymore. Fang Yan turned to look at Yi Rose, looked straight into her beautiful eyes and said, I'll be right back. Yi Rose nodded. If I don't come back, I will avenge you and then raise your parents. There's something else I need your help with, but I don't know how to ask. Speak. Our Fang family has only one child for generations. If I don't come back today, when you have children in the future, can you choose one of them to be surnamed Fang? The muscles on Yi Rose's face twitched and she asked coldly, do you think the child's father will agree? Fang Yan's expression changed drastically and he said, are you really going to have children with him? Why not? Yi Rose looked straight into Fang Yan's anxious eyes and said, if that man is Fang Yan. Fang Yan stretched out his arm and Yi Rose lay in his arms like a little bird. There was no shyness nor was there any violence. It was so natural, filled with reluctance. Gong Sun Qi glanced at his master and then quickly looked away. He thought, master doesn't need to do this, right? Yi Rose and Gong Sun Qi began to retreat and they only stopped when they reached the edge of Flying Peak. Even this place wasn't considered safe for two heavenly Dao realm experts to fight. However, they were powerful themselves. As long as they didn't directly participate in the battle, just some forces and rocks wouldn't be able to harm them. Fang Yan and the divine dragon stood facing each other. One side's clothes were whiter than snow, and they were moist like water. However, the water wasn't a stream, but a vast ocean that surged without end. The other side wore a heavy gray robe and he had a steady and unshakable aura. Both of them had their auras converged and not a single bit of their forces leaked out. Even so, they still gave off an unreachable sense of distance. Fang Yan was smiling and so was Tiafeng. Both of them were smiling naturally and casually without any signs of danger. Fang Yan placed one hand behind him and the other made an inviting gesture and said, Mr. Divine Dragon, please go ahead. Young man, don't stand on ceremony. The Divine Dragon said with a smile. As he spoke, he tapped the ground with his toes and a rock shattered into countless pieces. The countless rocks turned into countless weapons, and as if they had eyes, they stabbed at Fang Yan in front of him. This shameless old man, Fang Yan cursed in his heart. Although he said that the young man shouldn't stand on ceremony, his hands were already attacking the young man without restraint. Fang Yan waved his hands and waved them in the air. Then a huge balloon was pushed forward. Crack, crack. The gravel hit the huge invisible balloon and bounced back, shooting at the divine dragon. At the same time, the balloon drifted towards the divine dragon desperately, as if it was going to envelop the entire divine dragon inside. With a smile on his face, the divine dragon stretched out a finger and poked at the balloon. Master, Gong Sun Qi's heart almost jumped out of his throat. He was not sure about the strength of the water overflow state, but he knew that there was something else to this balloon. As long as his master's body touched this balloon, it would explode and tear him into pieces. Poof! The divine dragon tried his best to tap the balloon with his finger. Just like a soap bubble blown by a child, it disappeared in the air without a trace. There was no explosion and no one was torn apart. This made Gong Sun Qi confused, but he could not ask anyone else. After all, she was the only one present who could answer his questions. He did not want to ask her. This exchange was completed in the time it took for a spark to fly off a piece of flint. Both of them only lifted their toes and waved their arms. During the battle, both of them stood in the same place and did not move at all. Everything returned to normal. The divine dragon looked at Fang Yan and said with a smile, "This is considered a warm-up, right?" Fang Yan nodded and said, "Warm-up complete." In the Phoenix Orchid Grove in the courtyard stood a man completely shrouded in a black robe. He stood there motionlessly as if he had become one with the phoenix tree. However, his eyes were bright. This was the only proof that he was still alive. "Because I think you're more valuable than them," Xianxia said coldly. "High and mighty without any feelings. So, prove to me the value of your existence." The man bowed slightly and disappeared from the courtyard. Mu Ying walked over and stood behind Xianxia. He followed her line of sight and looked at the mountain peak in the distance. He asked, "Is he trustworthy?" "Of course not," Xianxia answered without hesitation. "Would you trust a blade?" "Young lady, what do you mean?" "I'm only giving him a chance to prove himself. I don't trust him at all. Trust is a very precious word. I have to give it to the people I care about the most." "I understand," Mu Ying nodded. "Has the battle begun?" Xianxia asked. "Our people have arrived at Feng Mountain, but they haven't found the exact location of the battle between Fang Yan and the Dragon God. This is also their intention. They don't want anyone to disturb them except for the two sides. But as soon as they have a result, they will send it back immediately." Xianxia didn't deny it. She handed the teacup to Mu Ying and said, "I'm going to take a bath." Mu Ying took the teacup and continued to guard the place. He knew that countless people were waiting for the final result. Watching. Lu Zhaoge finished his work and walked to the courtyard for a few steps to get some fresh air. "It's good. At least I can take a breather now." The Lan clan of Lan Mountain Valley, the Lu clan of Willow Tree, and their Chaoyan technology were all in great danger when the Jiang clan suddenly launched an attack on them. Any carelessness and they could be destroyed or devoured by them. Coupled with Li Yu's kidnapping and Du Qing's imprisonment, the ironclad alliance they had painstakingly built in Huaqing was almost dismembered. Without Huaqing to support Fang Yan, how could they fight against the Jiang clan in the future? Fortunately, at the most critical moment, the Qin clan jumped out and helped them offset the majority of the Jiang clan's attack and attracted the Jiang clan's main firepower. But the situation still wasn't optimistic. The Jiang clan was still the Jiang clan, and the Qin clan didn't intend to start a full-scale war with them. It was already difficult for them to protect themselves. To defeat the Jiang clan, they didn't even know how to start. But if Fang Yan won, it would be tough for him. Lu Zhaoge didn't know martial arts, but she was a smart woman. She knew how to judge the situation. She was very clear that the success or failure of this battle would determine the success or failure of Chaoyan technology, and the existence of the ironclad alliance of Huaqing. If Fang Yan was defeated or killed in battle, would the Qin clan still be willing to support them like this? Would Lan Mountain Valley and Lu Shu, who were fighting together with them, still advance and retreat with them? If Fang Yan was no longer around, how much loyalty would they have left to this side? The worst-case scenario was that when they realized that the situation wasn't right and smelled blood, they might turn red and counterattack, becoming their biggest enemy. As an outstanding manager, as Fang Yan's representative in Huaqing, he had to have this sense of crisis. He could only keep this thought in his heart, in the deepest part of his heart. He couldn't even let his current battle partners know about it. He had to be fully prepared. Lu Zhaoge was very tired. But at this moment she suddenly relaxed. She felt that it was a little strange. Fang Yan was fighting a decisive battle in Feng Mountain, and his life was hanging by a thread. Shouldn't she be more worried? Shouldn't she be under more pressure? Soon she figured out the reason. She gave up, or rather temporarily gave up. Because the decisive factors were all gathered on Fang Yan. Fang Yan bore all the pressure for them. If Fang Yan won, then they would naturally sound the horn to counterattack and fight to the death with the Jiang clan. But if Fang Yan lost or Fang Yan died, their efforts in Huaqing wouldn't have much meaning. With just them, they couldn't stop the attack of the Jiang clan or other forces. This had nothing to do with how hard they worked. Only now did Lu Zhaoge truly realize the importance of Fang Yan's existence to them. That young man, that delicate man with thin shoulders, the man who idled around all day and was complained that he didn't do proper work, was actually supporting and protecting them in his own way. Fang Yan, Lu Chaoga looked at the gray sky. Today's weather wasn't very good. There was no moon or stars in the sky. However, the night breeze was cool, so it didn't make people feel depressed. Lu Chaoga held her stomach and said softly, "You must live." Swallow Doc. The teacher was used to sleeping early. If there was nothing else, he would eat dinner at around 8 o'clock every night, boil a bucket of hot water, soak his feet and then lie in bed to sleep. Of course, he was also the earliest to get up in the village. When the people of Swallow Dock were still in their sweet dreams, he had already gotten up with a manure basket on his back to pick up feces. There were many domestic animals in Swallow Dock. The animals wandered around and defecated everywhere. However, the people who came to Swallow Dock would feel that it was especially clean. It was rare to see any animal feces, because they were all picked up by the elders of Swallow Dock, led by the teacher. The night was gloomy and the weather was cold. The teacher who lived at the entrance of the village was the first to bear the brunt of the cold. The north wind blew, almost sweeping up the straw mat in his thatched cottage. The teacher stood in the middle of the courtyard wearing a fox skin. He looked up at the sky and muttered to himself, "It's probably going to snow heavily before the Lapa festival." He held an enamel jar in his hand which contained a large amount of tea leaves. After taking a big gulp of the tea leaves, the teacher looked at the green mountains in the distance and sighed, "This child is still too impatient. But isn't the water overflow realm in line with the heavens? If I had severed my mortal thoughts back then, where would I be now? Since Fang Yan has the confidence to challenge the dragon god, it means that he is fully prepared. He will soar to the heavens tonight." Fang Clan. Fang Clan's ancestral hall. Fang Hui, the old master of the Fang Clan, didn't have dinner that night. In the evening he asked his eldest son-in-law to push him in, then chased his son-in-law away and closed the door of the ancestral hall. Before this he had already abstained from meat and wine. He knelt in front of the plaque of the Fang Clan's ancestors and prayed devoutly. He didn't believe in ghosts and gods, but he still hoped that they could protect his grandson. Fang Yan will win. Chapter 838. This was a world where looks mattered. Jia Zhaoqiang was short and fat and he stuttered a little. According to the natural elimination law of society, it was not easy for a man like him to find a partner. However, if he was the second young master of the Jia family in Yanjing, it would be a different story. Jia Zhaoqiang knew where his disadvantage was. Compared with other handsome playboys, he felt that he was too simple and honest. Therefore, in order to make up for his shortcomings, Jia Zhaoqiang especially liked to spend money. Anyway, he had secretly calculated that according to his current daily consumption level, the existing assets of the Jia family were enough for him to squander for 365 years. Even if he gave 265 years to his elder brother, he still had 100 years to enjoy. Jia Zhaoqiang was very worried that he would not live to 100 years old. Therefore, Jia Zhaoqiang put in a lot of effort when he spent money. For example, this time, in order to enjoy the much-anticipated Battle of Foam Mountain, Jia Zhaoqiang brought a team of Hummers. There were 2 bodyguards from the famous security company Golden Shield Security. In fact, he did not need bodyguards at all. However, rich playboys and young ladies all brought bodyguards. If he did not bring 2 bodyguards, wouldn't he be looked down upon? There was a chef and a personal assistant, red wine produced by a centuries-old Bordeaux wine cellar, a charcoal oven and a rising B-list star Li Qing whom he had arranged a time earlier. Naturally, Jia Zhaoqiang gathered with other playboys. They drank and bragged and then took beautiful girls to the tent for wild sex. After Jia Zhaoqiang drank 2 bottles of wine and ate a few pieces of fat but not greasy lamb legs, he became interested in that aspect. He dragged the star named Li Qing into the tent. Li Qing followed Jia Zhaoqiang with infinite shyness in the midst of the playful teasing of those playboys. Whoosh! A white shadow flashed in front of Jia Zhaoqiang's eyes, rolling up a cold wind and attacking Jia Zhaoqiang's body. Jia Zhaoqiang stood there for a long time and asked, "Did you see anything?" Li Qing was busy acting shy. How could she notice anything else? So she shook her head and said, "What? I didn't see anything." Jia Zhaoqiang rubbed his eyes and said, "It seems that there is nothing. Let's go in. You only know how to scare people." Li Qing pinched Jia Zhaoqiang's fat arm. It was more like she was scratching and flirting with him. "I really saw a shadow," Jia Zhaoqiang said seriously. Seeing Li Qing's tender and alluring little face, Jia Zhaoqiang felt that there was really no need for him to waste time on some insignificant matters. So Jia Zhaoqiang held Li Qing's little hand and said, maybe I'm seeing things. Come quickly, I'm in a good mood, I'll let you enjoy yourself today. Pa. A black object flew towards Jia Zhaoqiang's face. Jia Zhaoqiang couldn't dodge in time, and his fat face was hit by the object. Who is it? Jia Zhaoqiang shouted. Who the F***ck hit me? He reached out his hand to touch his face and there was a layer of greasy stuff on his palm. He placed it in front of his nose and sniffed it. It smelled like roasted mutton. Jia Zhaoqiang looked at his feet. It was the leg of lamb that he had thrown away earlier. He kicked the leg of lamb away and shouted at the top of his voice, who the F***ck threw something at me? What's going on? Are you not satisfied with me? If you're not satisfied, come out and fight me one-on-one. Don't you think hiding in the dark and doing this kind of thing is too shameful? Although Jia Zhaoqiang was fat, he wasn't stupid at all. He had already calculated in his heart. In this area, there were only 3 families that the Jia family couldn't afford to offend, and one of them was a woman. The other 2 families were stationed slightly further away from him. Even if they wanted to hit him with a roasted mutton leg, they probably didn't have the strength to do so. Therefore, the people who could throw a mutton leg at his face were naturally the people that the Jia family wasn't afraid of. Jia, who hit you? What are you shouting about? Even a small celebrity can't shut your mouth? Old Jia, if you don't go, I won't be polite anymore. Li Qing happens to be my type. Why don't I swap places with you? Li Qing pulled Jia Zhaoqiang's arm and whispered, Brother Chong, let's go in. I'm scared. Jia Zhaoqiang rubbed his face that was hurting from being hit by the mutton leg and said, Son of AB***, don't let me know who did this shameless thing. If I find out, I'll definitely cut off the pig head meat on your face piece by piece. After saying that, Jia Zhaoqiang was about to enter the tent with his butt in the air when his butt suddenly tightened. Flap. Something hard smashed into his buttocks. Jia Zhaoqiang suddenly turned around and shouted, Who? Who did this? Come out right now. If you have the guts, fight me one-on-one. I'll skin you alive today. Their employer was attacked, and the 2 retired bodyguards naturally ran over to protect him. Young Master Chong, it's a mutton leg. One of the bodyguards used a knife to pick up the suspected murder weapon from the ground and reported to Jia Zhaoqiang. Damn it. Jia Zhaoqiang looked at it and realized it was the mutton leg that he had just thrown out. Now Jia Zhaoqiang couldn't curse anymore. He had a creepy feeling in his heart. They were stationed at the edge of the canyon. There was a river at the edge of the canyon called Red River. When Jia Zhaoqiang threw the mutton leg, it was thrown in the direction of the Red River. In other words, this roasted mutton leg should be lying quietly at the bottom of the Red River. Why did it appear again? And it hit my butt? The more Jia Zhaoqiang thought about it, the more scared he felt. Young Master Chong, should we search the area? The other bodyguard asked. Brother Chong, let's go in. What's wrong? Why are you looking at me like that? Li Qing saw Jia Zhaoqiang's pale face and eyes filled with fear. Jia Zhaoqiang grabbed Li Qing's hand and said, Go back, let's go back now. Brother Chong, are we not going to watch the final battle? Not anymore. Let's go. Drive. Go and drive. Ada and Aquan are in our car. Be careful. Yes. The 2 bodyguards didn't know what was going on, but they agreed readily. To be able to squeeze in the same car with the beauty Li Qing was something they couldn't ask for. Although Li Qing couldn't jump to the top in the eyes of these bodyguards, she was already an unapproachable big shot. After warming up, it was time to get down to business. Shenron's body disappeared on the spot, then suddenly appeared in front of Fang Yan. Shenron struck with his palm. It was an ordinary palm. Fang Yan reached out to receive it, but it was too late. That palm pressed against his chest. The heart of Tai Chi spun naturally and the chi in his body leaked out wildly. Then it gathered at the chest that was about to be hit by Shenron's attack. Pa, that palm hit a transparent ball of light. It was like a firefly that was freed from a bottle cap. Starlight scattered in all directions and Fang Yan's body was also sent flying out. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Fang Yan, who was in the air, was still dizzy. He hadn't been able to react or adapt to the rhythm of the attack. Fang Yan's eyes were still watching the moment Shenron disappeared, but Shenron had already arrived in front of him. When Fang Yan saw Shenron coming to him, he had already struck with his palm. When Fang Yan saw the ordinary palm that the divine dragon had painstakingly unleashed, he raised his hand to block it. However, the palm was already about to land on his chest. If it wasn't for the heart of Tai Chi, which spun naturally when it was in danger, forming a protective ball of air in front of his chest, that stream of air would have blocked Shenren's palms. Although in the end, they were smashed into pieces by Shenren's seemingly ordinary palm, but they still managed to protect Fang Yan's vital points and saved Fang Yan's life. Otherwise, who would be willing to suffer Shenren's palm for nothing? Fang Yan's body kept flying. He flew over Yi Rou's head, over the forest, over the boulders, and was about to fly out of the range of the mountain to the cliff where he missed his footing. Fang Yan knew the height of Feilai Peak. If he were to fall, he would definitely die. He forcefully gathered his qi and leaped into the air, taking large strides towards the peak of Feilai Peak. It looked like a celestial being sprinting in midair. Fang Yan's feet landed on the ground, and he felt a sweet taste in his throat as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Fang Yan, are you all right? Yi Rou asked anxiously. Yi Rou was also a heavenly Dao realm expert. She had also watched the duel from a close distance, so she could understand how miraculous Shenren's palm strike was. No, he didn't look miraculous at all. His disappearance was very ordinary, and so was his palm strike. There was no flying sand and rocks, nor was there any thunder or lightning. He had just struck out his palm in such an ordinary manner. However, there was no way to dodge or block it. Even if she were to deal with that palm strike, she would probably end up being sent flying, right? Is this the true strength of Shenren's Shenron? Yi Rou thought worriedly. If that was the case, did Fang Yan really have a chance of winning? Fang Yan. Gong Sun Chi had just shouted Fang Yan's name when he hurriedly shut his mouth. Fang Yan was his master's opponent. How could he be overly worried about him in a battle between the two of them? Your eyes are deceiving you, Shenron said in a deep voice as he looked at Fang Yan with great difficulty. Chapter 839. Your eyes are deceiving you. The dragon god looked at the injured Fang Yan and said, You didn't see me. I didn't see you. Fang Yan's expression was solemn as he said in a low voice. You saw me disappear on the spot. I wasn't me at that time. You saw me appear in front of you. I wasn't me at that time either. You saw me attack. I wasn't me at that time either. The human eye will create some illusions for the brain. Some illusions are formed naturally. Some are created artificially. Everything you saw was created artificially. I understand. Fang Yan nodded. Now I've thought it through. The ripples you created when you disappeared were illusions. Then you used one illusion after another to create a complete attack. But at that time you were already in front of me. That palm strike, I endured that palm strike much earlier than what I saw. Mountain spirit manifestation. The dragon god said with a smile. It's just a small trick. But if it's used cleverly, it can achieve unexpected results. You've just entered the water overflow state. It's rare for you to understand the key to it so quickly. It's the heart of Tai Chi, Fang Yan explained. I thought the heart of Tai Chi would only react naturally when there's danger. Now I understand. My heart of Tai Chi has already started to prepare when it sensed danger. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to block your attack just now. The heart of Tai Chi is a 1,000-year-old lost art. It's indeed extraordinary. However, in these hundreds and thousands of years, there aren't many who could achieve the heart of Taiji. The divine dragon god gave Fang Yan a very high evaluation. You're a rare talent in the Tai Chi lineage. In time your achievements will be limitless. Thank you, Mr. Dragon God, for your praise. Fang Yan said with a smile. He took out a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped the blood stain at the corner of his mouth. The white robe on his body was soaked in red spots by the blood, but there was nothing he could do about it. Who wouldn't bleed in the midst of fighting and killing? If it wasn't his blood, then it was someone else's. Fang Yan put the blood-stained handkerchief into his pocket, looked at the dragon god and said, Let's try again. Look again. The divine dragon looked at Fang Yan with great difficulty and said. As he spoke, the dragon god once again disappeared from the spot. In the air there was the sound of space being torn apart and the sound of air being wrapped up. The divine dragon once again appeared in front of Fang Yan and slapped Fang Yan's chest. It was the same attack method as before. The sense of rhythm. The dragon god's desperate attacks already had its own unique rhythm. Moreover, he was the one leading the rhythm. Everything was under his control. You could only obey or follow his rhythm. Otherwise, you would only suffer worse consequences. Because his attack was a domain, an illusion. If the domain was broken, it would explode. The shattering of the illusion would leave people at a loss as to what to do. Don't even think about it. Fang Yan's eyes turned cold as he gritted his teeth. This time, no matter what, he would not let the dragon god hit him again. Just as he was thinking this, the heart of Taiji had already started to spin. That transparent crystal seemed to be motionless, but it had already increased its speed to the limit. It was like the sun and moon in the sky that had not moved, but their speed was not something that could be followed by human strength. Waves of warm air broke down from the crystal core and gathered at the spot where the attack was about to hit. They were about to gather into a ball of light again and block the dragon god's desperate attack. Of course, this was the heart of Taiji's natural resistance. Fang Yan also wanted to resist. His body spread out and his feet drew circles on the ground. His body spun into a white ball of light. This time he finally had the time to fully spread out drunken crane riding the wind. His body turned into a ball of feathers, a leaf and a transparent ball of light. When you hit a feather with your fist, would the feather be hurt? No, before your fist even touched the feather, the strong airflow stirred up by your fist would have already sent the feather flying. Fang Yan was the feather that could be sent flying at any time. Of course, this time was different from the last time. This time he was the one who wanted to be sent flying. He was consciously trying to avoid and defend himself. Last time he was accidentally hit and was sent flying. Fang Yan felt that he was well prepared this time. Pa! Another palm hit Fang Yan's chest. The palm was light as a feather, but it suddenly came. It pierced through time and space without any warning. Moreover, Fang Yan's drunken crane riding the wind didn't even have time to dodge this palm. In other words, even if Fang Yan turned into a ball of feathers, the dragon god's desperate palm could still destroy the feather. If he used too much strength, the feather would fly away. If he used too little strength, he wouldn't be able to cause any damage to the feather. However, this choice wasn't too difficult for the dragon god's desperate life. He wanted to hit and he hit. It looked as simple as eating and drinking. Fang Yan tried everything he could and prepared himself, but still couldn't stop the dragon god's desperate palm. And it was the same palm that he had used before. A fight between experts can change in an instant. Once a technique is used too often, it can bring fatal danger to oneself. However, the dragon god's desperate life managed to use the same palm to send Fang Yan flying twice in a row. Fang Yan's body once again flew into the air. Like a kite, he was blown into the air by the wind, then forcefully used qi to twist his body. Whoosh! Fang Yan stepped through the air, once again landing in front of the dragon god's desperate life. The dragon god stared at Fang Yan and smiled. At that time, you shouldn't have forcefully used qi. Fang Yan smiled, but dark red blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Fang Yan's internal organs were injured, and this injury was more serious than the last time. This time it was your brain that lied to you. The dragon god stared at Fang Yan and smiled. Fang Yan once again took out the handkerchief from his pocket and carefully wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Then he folded the handkerchief once again. He folded the blood-stained part inside to prevent it from dirtying his clothes when he put it in his pocket. After he was done with these matters, Fang Yan looked at the divine dragon and said, "I understand." "What do you understand?" the dragon god asked. "I understand how an expert should fight." Fang Yan grinned. He laughed heartily and comfortably. "Yes, this kind of feeling is really wonderful. You only used your finger to poke through a layer of window paper, but you can discover a colorful and wonderful world." The water overflow realm focused on intent and not action. The intent was the soul and action was the bone. In the past, when Fang Yan fought with others, he would always use all sorts of moves to fight with his life on the line. Elbow strikes, crotch kicks, throat grabbing, nothing was spared. It was all to defeat his opponent. But it was different now. Such a method could not injure an expert at the heavenly Tao realm. Just like a figure like the dragon god, he might shatter you with a palm before you could even throw a punch. Forget about moves. There was no need to deliberately remember anything. Just follow the heavenly Tao naturally. The heavenly Tao was the highest law, far surpassing the martial Tao that Fang Yan had painstakingly learned for more than 20 years. Now they should be using intent and aura to fight and not just those moves from before. Otherwise you would be at a disadvantage, always slower than others. Gongsun Chi came in front of Yi Ro and whispered, "What do they mean? Why did Master say that Fang Yan was deceived by his brain? Can the brain deceive itself?" Yi Ro did not even look Gongsun Chi in the eye and said with a deadpan expression, "You don't understand. Gong Sun Chi knew that he was here to embarrass himself. They weren't even from the same world as them, so why did they come here? Then, the smile on Dragon God's face gradually disappeared. He looked at Fang Yen seriously and said, "Let us begin for real." Just as he said that, Fang Yen had already appeared in front of him. No, he appeared above him. Fang Yen was flying high above, holding a huge balloon in his arms. The balloon looked like it was corporeal, and it even made hissing sounds as it fell. There was gas flowing around the balloon, and when some of it was released, more of it would come in to replenish it. Fang Yen pressed the balloon in his hand towards the top of the Dragon God's head. The Dragon God's struggling fingers stretched out halfway before he quickly retracted them. His body turned illusory and he disappeared into thin air. Rumble! A huge explosion rang out, and then a strong airflow swept through everything in the surroundings like a sharp blade. The grass was broken, and some of the thicker branches and tree trunks were also directly cut into two by the scattered air currents. The place where Dragon God was standing just now had become a huge pit more than a meter deep. The stench of burnt rocks came from the pit, and some weeds and branches were directly burned into the air. If Dragon God had not dodged in time, he would have been vaporized by now. Dragon God stood on a large protruding rock, looked at the huge pit and looked at Fang Yen with interest and said, "This is getting interesting." In the cave halfway up Feilai Peak, a man wrapped in a black robe sat. He was motionless like a withered corpse, but his ears were slightly perked up, listening to every movement on the mountain top. He was the third party in this battle. Chapter 840. 1,000 cups of wine was too little. To the Dragon God, the current Fang Yen was the only one who could truly be his opponent. The more powerful Fang Yen did not make him panic. Instead, it was something that made him feel happy both physically and mentally. Just as the Dragon God told his disciple Gong Sun Chi, he had not exercised for a long time. There was no motivation to exercise, and there was no opponent that interested him. Fang Yan's appearance made him want to fight again. Just as he was about to let his disciple Gong Sun Chi challenge Fang Yen came looking for him. However, Fang Yen was an expert who had just entered the overflow state. He was like a farmer's boy who had just left the mountain village, only to find out that he was the heir to a billionaire family, and that he was about to inherit a fortune that could rival a country. He was so excited that he bought a sports car, a luxurious villa, and kept a C-list celebrity as his mistress. He felt that his life was too luxurious. In the eyes of the truly rich, he was still a country bumpkin. He did not know how to spend money. In the eyes of the Dragon God, Fang Yen did not know how to use the power of the overflow state. He had a mountain of treasures, but he did not know how to squander them. To people like them who valued martial arts as much as their lives, it was a pity. Therefore he guided Fang Yen step by step, hoping that he could find the feeling sooner. Now he saw the results of his labor. Fang Yan's talent was quite high and did not let him down at all. Of course, if Fang Yen was not talented enough, he would not have been able to understand the deeper meaning of his words so quickly. "Congratulations on entering the water overflow realm," the Dragon God said to Fang Yen with a smile as he struggled to stand on the protruding boulder. Fang Yen understood what the Dragon God meant. At this time he truly had the power of the overflow state. Although he had entered the overflow state long ago in the previous battles, he was still a martial artist who only knew how to use brute force. He would be confused by the illusion created by the enemy, and he would be blinded and led by the opponent's consciousness. He could not be himself. He could not unleash the true power of the water overflow realm. "I know how to fight now," Fang Yen said with a smile. He bowed slightly to the Dragon God and said, "Then let me use my ultimate strength to defeat you. Come avenge Mo Qingdi." "That's what I thought before. I wanted to defeat you just like how you defeated Mo Qingdi," Fang Yen said with a serious expression. "But now I only want to defeat you. This is the true meaning of this battle." "What? Are you not willing to avenge Mo Qingdi?" "I think he would be willing to settle such a matter himself. Even if I did defeat you, he would only see it as me defeating you and not as me avenging him." "Indeed." The divine dragon nodded his head with much difficulty. "This is the character of not underestimating the enemy. I found the true meaning of fighting." Fang Yen smiled and said, "So, please accept my challenge." As he spoke, Fang Yan's body rose into the air. His figure disappeared in the air, then reappeared in front of the Dragon God. Fang Yen slammed his palm towards the Dragon God's face. It was a light punch, seemingly without any force behind it. However, after seeing Fang Yan's attack, the dragon god Imo underestimated the enemy's expression became unprecedentedly solemn. This palm was full of concept and power. He formed a delicate balance, an extremely closed and domineering domain. This made the dragon god unable to accept it, but it would not be good if he did not accept it. The divine dragon tenaciously sent out a palm strike as well. It was also a light and seemingly powerless palm strike. Ho! Their palms collided in the air, creating ripples in the air. As their palms approached, the ripples became larger and larger, and the air currents gathered became more and more frenzied. Fang Yan and the dragon god's palms finally met, like two magnets slowly approaching each other. Like repels, the greater the magnetic force, the greater the force you exert, the greater the repulsive force. Hiss! The air currents stirred up by Fang Yan and the dragon god hissed, like a beautiful shirt that was torn to pieces before it could be put on. This was Fang Yan's domain meeting dragon god's domain. When the air currents in the domain were completely drained, both of their domains could not hold on any longer and exploded at the same time. Boom! The transparent gas exploded. Other than the dust in the air and the large crater on the ground, there was almost no evidence. Meanwhile, Fang Yan and the dragon god Laborious disappeared to the left and right. When they appeared in front of everyone again, it was when Fang Yan grabbed a big ball and slammed it on the dragon god Laborious' head. The dragon god Laborious punched out and a huge hole appeared in the ball, but it still persisted and shrouded the dragon god Laborious' body. Boom! The ball smashed on the boulder under the dragon god Laborious' feet, and the boulder bore the brunt of the violent force. Huge cracks appeared on the surface of the stone. First it broke from top to bottom. Then cracking sounds rang out incessantly. Countless small cracks appeared. Finally, the base of the huge stone could no longer support itself and collapsed with a rumble. With his attack missing, Fang Yan did not dare to delay. He quickly turned around and the dragon god Laborious' palm was already aimed at his back. Fang Yan punched back and in an instant the two exchanged more than 300 punches and more than 700 kicks in the air. In a flash it was like a thunderbolt. Gong Sun Chi was dumbfounded and said, "Is this the heavenly Tao realm? Their strength chi is endless? The cycle is the true meaning of the water overflow realm. Force is like water and the chi in one's body is inexhaustible. The constant flow of force is called water overflow." Yi Ro raised her eyebrows and said, "According to this fighting style with their cultivation level, it's normal for them to fight for 3 days and 3 nights. Gong Sun Chi was amazed and said, "Amazing. We should chase after them bravely and not let them monopolize the glory." Yi Ro did not have a good impression of Gong Sun Chi, and if it wasn't for the sake of supporting Fang Yan, she wouldn't have minded beating him up. If Fang Yan defeated Laborious, Gong Sun Chi would definitely want to avenge his master. When that happened, she would have to beat him up. If Fang Yan was defeated by Laborious, she might have to kill Laborious in order to avenge Fang Yan, and if he wanted to avenge his master, she would still have to beat him up. They were born to be enemies. This contradiction could not be reconciled. Since they were not friends, Yi Ro's tone was not polite at all. "Work hard." Yi Ro's voice was cold and she said, "But some things can't be done with hard work." Boom! A thunderous sound once again resounded in the air. When the giant ball exploded, Fang Yan and Laborious Life were rushing to the periphery. When the explosion ended, sand and pebbles flew everywhere, and the trees withered and disappeared. They had almost raised half of the flying peak to the ground. Fang Yan stood on the east side of Flying Peak, while Laborious Life stood on the west side of Flying Peak. The two stood facing each other from afar, not saying a word, not even taking a step, but the sound of swords clashing could be heard. "Sword!" Laborious Life shouted. Gong Sun Chi threw the sword in his hand over, and when Laborious Life reached out to catch it, the scabbard naturally fell off, and the sword that fell into Laborious Life's hand happened to be the 3-foot-long sword. With the sword in hand, Laborious Life's aura became even colder and more murderous. "I like using swords. Do you have a suitable weapon?" Laborious Life looked at Fang Yan and asked. Fang Yan shrugged and said, "I only have this pair of palms." "Then I'll take advantage of you," Laborious Life smiled and said. He didn't have to say that. Because opponents of their level could hurt with just a flying leaf or a plucking flower. Some were good with spears, some with short swords. Some were good with fists or iron palms. If a sword against a fist was a great advantage, then what about a sword against a spear? In the end, It all depended on the subtlety of the technique or the control of strength as well as the right time and place. Laborious Life might not be able to win against Fang Yan even with a sword, just like how Emochingdi the Azure Dragon couldn't win against Laborious Life even with a spear. Fang Yan practiced Tai Chi, so holding a spear or a sword wasn't his forte. In the path of martial arts, one had to use what one was good at. For example, Fang Yan killed Tao addict Song transplanting seedlings with one shot. Seeing Laborious Life using a spear, Yi Ro raised her eyebrows slightly. She knew that it wasn't good for Fang Yan, but she didn't say anything. Laborious Life's forte was good with a sword. This was something everyone knew. It would be unfair if he wasn't allowed to use a sword in the competition. Besides, if Fang Yan had a weapon he liked, he could use it too. Laborious Life would not stop Laborious Life. Looking at the sword in Laborious Life's hand, Yi Ro's heart couldn't help but tighten. This sword was called Exorcist. Back then, Laborious Life used this sword to cut off Emochingdi the Azure Dragon's tendons, causing the Azure Dragon's cultivation to be completely destroyed. Since then he had been a useless person. Now that he had used the Demon Slayer sword again, what would be Fang Yan's fate? Laborious Life raised the Exorcist Life sword, the seemingly ordinary pitch-black sword without a trace of light. Fang Yan, take this, Laborious Life said to Fang Yan. Chapter 841. You can only see the demon-slaying sword before and after he draws his sword. Emochingdi once said to Fang Yan. It meant that when the dragon god draws his sword, you can't see the earth sword in his hand. Fang Yan naturally believed it because Emochingdi didn't see it back then either. Otherwise he wouldn't have expressed his feelings like this. Fang Yan's current level was the same as Emochingdi's back then, but he didn't dare to say that he was stronger than Emochingdi back then. At his peak, Emochingdi was glorious, much more high-profile and dazzling than he was now. Of course, this was mainly because he liked to keep a low profile. He wasn't the kind of man who would go around showing off his achievements. For example, the fact that he had stepped into the water overflow state. Other than telling his grandfather Fang Hui, mother Lu Wan, fiancé Yi Ro's dead father, and the ancestors of the Fang family, only Master Yi Fengxing, Yi Shaojun, Bruce Lee and Wan Jing of Swallow Dock knew about it. He even specifically told them not to tell anyone else. He didn't like to show off and he didn't like to be feared. Fang Yan knew that the dragon god had lost his patience. Based on their level of cultivation, if they were to fight regularly, it would probably take 3 days and 3 nights. Obviously, that wasn't in line with the dragon god's interests. First, he didn't want to fight with Fang Yan for so long. Because the longer it went on, the greater the impact. Maybe even the country would step in to stop it. A battle without an outcome was like doing something without a climax. It was a waste of time and energy. If other onlookers found this place, the scene would be even more chaotic. It would affect the mood of the battle. Second, he was old, and no matter how strong he was, he couldn't compare to a young man like Fang Yan, who became more energetic and ferocious as he fought. Moreover, he realized that Fang Yan's learning ability was shockingly fast. With a few words of advice, he immediately broke through the wall and entered the real water overflow state. If he fought with him for 3 days and 3 nights, how much combat experience would he learn? The dragon god just needed a real opponent, but that didn't mean he wanted to lose this battle. So he chose to use a sword. Fang Yan had no sword, only a pair of iron feet and 2 iron fists. Please. Fang Yan said. His voice was soft and there was almost no movement of his lips. It was as if those words were not spoken by him at all. Fang Yan calmed himself down, his state of mind unprecedentedly tranquil. His eyes were clear but his mind was blank. The heart of Taiji slowly flowed, like the roaming clouds in the sky, like the birds taking a stroll on the ground, like the brook in the forest, unhurried and natural. That transparent crystal hung upside down in the middle of the energy sea, surrounded by clouds and mist. That was the scattered chi that did not abide by the rules. There was an immortal mountain in the immortal world. The mountain was in the sea of clouds. Under Fang Yan's gaze, the dragon god's life disappeared. It was like a goshawk disappearing in the sky. The goshawk was powerful, but the sky was vast and boundless. It was difficult for it to cause any ripples. Fang Yan only had eyes for that sword. It was a very strange scene. The body of the dragon god's life disappeared, but the sword in his hand was still there. That sword hung in mid-air, like an instrument controlled by an immortal. It rushed toward Fang Yan at lightning speed. Its target was firm and it stabbed toward Fang Yan's face. You can only see the Demon Slayer sword before and after he draws his sword. This was what Imochingdi told Fang Yan. However, Fang Yan could clearly see that sword. He could see it clearly, even the slight vibration of the blade, and he could even hear the buzzing sound of the blade as it flew. Something's wrong. Fang Yan suddenly came to a realization. Imochingdi couldn't see it, but why could he see it? The dragon god's life disappeared, but why didn't the sword disappear? This wasn't a sword. It was a sword shadow. It was the shadow left by the long sword before it was swung. Because it was so fast, it left a trail in the air like a white rainbow. Where was the real body of the sword? Fang Yan's body flew into the air, like a cannonball that had been fired. The sword appeared. The sword appeared in front of Fang Yan. The sword appeared in between Fang Yan's eyebrows, and then it grew infinitely larger. It was like a giant pillar that could hold up the sky, flying toward Fang Yan's head. Fang Yan felt his body tense up and every hair on his body stood on end. He felt the energy and hot blood in his body surge up from the bottom to the top, and then gathered in the middle of his head, as if it was going to burst through the top of his head and then burst out. It was a fear that reached the depths of his bones. Fang Yan had a strong feeling that he was going to be split in half. This sword was earth-shattering. It was ordinary, but it was majestic and spectacular. It made one's heart tremble and it was difficult to parry. There was no sound of thunder and no flash of lightning. It was just so quiet, like a ghost ship that suddenly appeared from the Black Sea. He was unstoppable and it wasn't something that could be done by a human. Immortal vanquishing. Gongsun Chi shouted in agitation. His pupils dilated as he muttered something. This is the immortal vanquishing sword art. It said that after the battle of the twin dragons, Master sealed this ultimate move, and it has never been used in front of others. So this is the might of the immortal vanquishing sword. This is the might of the immortal vanquishing sword. It's too shocking. Fang Yan. Yi Rou called out inwardly. Her hand was already holding on to the end of the whip by her waist, ready to rush forward to save him at any moment. She knew that sparring between heavenly Tao realm existences wasn't to be disturbed. She knew that this was a battle of honor and dignity between two peerless experts. She also knew that if she were to interfere she would be breaking the rules. She even knew that it would be difficult for her to succeed even if she tried to save him. However, he was her man, her husband that she wanted to spend the rest of her life with. She couldn't watch helplessly as he was slain by a single sword strike. Rules? What honor and dignity. Anyone could have it. All she wanted was for Fang Yan to be safe. Fang Yan's forehead was burning with pain. It was a pain that felt like his aura was about to be sliced apart. The clothes on his chest peeled off inch by inch, and before they could separate from his body, they were already burning in midair. Countless sparks appeared in the sky before they were instantly extinguished into ashes. Fang Yan closed his eyes. He raised his hands to block the sword as though it was a natural counterattack, but also a natural self-preservation reaction when one encountered danger. A golden beam of light tore through the sky, illuminating the entire peak of Feilai Peak as though it was daytime. The light of Taiji. This is the light of Taiji. Gongsun Chi was like a child who had never seen the world as he shouted in agitation. He had long heard that Fang Yan had figured out the light of Taiji. For this, a few elders from the Dao sect had specially gone to Swallow Dock to visit him, hoping that he would join the Dao sect and revive the declining trend of the Dao sect. He did not expect that he would not have the chance to see this unique skill until now. Fang Yan did not even use it when they went on a mission to the Millennium Palace. Of course, he also knew that with the flashy appearance of the light of Taiji, if Fang Yan used it, he would become a human target, and everyone would gather towards the place where the light of Taiji flashed. A smile also appeared on Yi Rou's face, but she was not as excited as Gongsun Chi. She knew the magic of the light of Taiji and secretly prayed that the light of Taiji could help Fang Yan block the killing move that the divine dragon had painstakingly used with all his might. This was Fang Yan, the man that Yi Rou liked. The light of Taiji. This was the light of Taiji that Fang Yan had figured out when he was besieged on the summit of Single Sword Peak. The light of Taiji was like a solid pillar of light, but it also looked like a huge golden sword. It went towards the demon-slaying sword that the divine dragon had painstakingly used. The demon-slaying sword slashed on the light of Taiji and a strong burst of air was heard. The light of Taiji swept away the demon-slaying sword, and blocked this round of attack that the divine dragon had painstakingly used. The divine dragon's painstakingly used body appeared in the air, and then disappeared again. He gripped the sword with both hands and flew down from above. Then he slashed at the light of Taiji. Like a knife cutting through tofu, the light of Taiji that was like a golden rainbow was cut into two by the demon-slaying sword. The sword's momentum did not decrease and continued to slash towards Fang Yan's face. The divine dragon's sword was definitely going to cut Fang Yan in two. No, if he was affected by the sword qi on the demon-slaying sword, it was likely that Fang Yan's whole body would be blasted into pieces. However, there were already very few people in this world that could make him a second severance. Even Mo Qingdi in the past had been severed under his third severance, so he could no longer move. Fang Yan could be called a prodigy of the martial Dao tier. Fang Yan's body was still flying backwards. Forced by the sword qi, Fang Yan's speed of retreat was even faster. The divine dragon was also chasing after him at high speed, looking like he would not give up until he achieved his goal. The demon-slaying sword was still in Fang Yan's eyes, but he knew that it was not the real sword. It was only the trajectory left behind by the sword when it was moving at high speed. Fang Yan's pupils dilated, and then his eyes also felt scorching hot. Fang Yan's eyes began to bleed. The blood flowed on his face and slid down his cheeks. Then his nose and mouth also began to bleed. The blood that flowed out did not even have time to spread. The demon-slaying sword slashed down from the top of Fang Yan's head, and his body was cut into two. Starting from the top of his head, then between his brows, eyes, nose, mouth, neck, abdomen and neck all the way to the lower part of his body. One Fang Yan became two halves of Fang Yan, and the two halves of Fang Yan fell to the left and right at the same time. This strike was clean and efficient, as easy and casual as a knife cutting through tofu. There was no blood. The divine dragon had worked hard and he actually did not see any blood. Chapter 842. There was no blood, which proved that he had missed. He found it hard to accept this outcome, but it seemed to be the truth. What he had slashed was not Fang Yan but Fang Yan's shadow. It was so fast that it almost solidified into an afterimage. Because Xinlong was too fast and his sword was too sharp, even his shadow could be cut in half. So where was the real Fang Yan? An invisible enemy was the most dangerous one. Xinlong sensed the danger. After his sword missed, he did a 180-degree turn and slashed horizontally without any hesitation. However, he was still one step too late. Screech! The sound of flesh being cut could be heard. Fang Yan's body flew in the air like a flying white sheep. Unbeknownst to him, he was already behind the divine dragon, holding a broken sword formed from the light of Tai Chi and stabbing it into the back of the divine dragon. With one successful strike, Fang Yan retreated. Screech! The demon-slaying sword slashed across Fang Yan's body, leaving a huge gash on his body. Crack! Both of them retreated at the same time and landed on the ground at the same time. Xinlong stood on the east side of the mountain peak, while Fang Yan stood on the west side. They were in the same position as before the battle, as if they had not moved at all. To the spectators, the two of them seemed to have fought for a few rounds, but all of this happened in the blink of an eye. Even the current recording equipment would not be able to capture any of their movements. The two of them stood opposite each other again, looking at each other calmly. After a few breaths, blood began to ooze from Fang Yan's chest. The threads of blood pushed open the flesh that had been cut open by the sword, and then the blood flowed out faster and more rapidly. Soon the remaining pieces of cloth on Fang Yan's body were dyed red with blood. His exposed chest was a mess of blood and flesh, and it looked like his injury was serious. Xinlong's expression was peaceful and his clothes were intact. He stood proudly like a master of his generation. However, Gong Sunqi, who had rushed to his back, could clearly see that his master's back was also bleeding. The blood soaked the robe and the gray robe became a deep faded color. The air was filled with a choking smell of blood. "Master is injured," Gong Sunqi exclaimed. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. His master, the dragon god, had worked so hard, yet he was injured? Ever since he started learning from his master, he had never seen his master suffer any harm. Even some small injuries that could be ignored had never happened. For example, cutting one's finger while cutting one's fingernail, cutting one's finger while peeling an apple, abrasions or bone dislocations while practicing martial arts. Never before. Now Fang Yan actually stabbed his own master with a sword? What exactly happened? The light of Tai Chi was condensed by strength Qi. After Fang Yan stabbed the broken sword that had been cut off by the demon-slaying sword into the back of the divine dragon, the light of Tai Chi disappeared naturally. The sword disappeared, and a wound that went deep into his internal organs naturally appeared on his body. "Your eyes are deceiving you," Fang Yan said as he looked at the mystical dragon. It was just like what the mystical dragon had said to him in the beginning. The same words, the same tone. Even the expression was the same. The high and mighty look made him look like he deserved a beating. "Yes, my eyes are deceiving me," the mystical dragon nodded and said. "Illusion. You used 3 layers of illusion. I have to say you're a genius. You've just learned how to use illusion to deceive your opponent and attack, but you've already reached this stage. I can only use 3 layers of illusion just like you." Fang Yan grinned, completely ignoring the blood flowing from his chest. "Your brain is deceiving you," Fang Yan said again. "That's right." The mystical dragon once again agreed with Fang Yan's conclusion. "I shouldn't have used the second sword. When your light of Tai Chi appeared, the body you showed was already an illusion. I shouldn't have insisted on using that sword." After a pause, the mystical dragon looked thoughtfully at Fang Yan and said, "In some ways you handled it better than the Azure Dragon Imoqing Di. I used 3 strikes to kill Imoqing Di, so I thought the second strike would be enough to take you down, and I even prepared the third strike. But when I used the second strike, you had already used illusion to escape and then attacked me from behind. You're different from Imoqing Di. Imoqing Di would have chosen to fight head-on, but you found another way. A great teacher produces a great disciple. You're a good teacher," Fang Yan said with a smile. "The teacher leads the way, but cultivation depends on the individual." The mystical dragon smiled as well. "How much you can comprehend depends on the individual. But there's a saying that I deeply agree with. If you teach your disciple, the master will starve to death. The ancients were right." "Now it's my turn to attack," Fang Yan said with a smile. The divine dragon struggled to lift the long sword and said, "Please." Step by step, Fang Yan walked towards the dragon god. He swaggered like a farm owner inspecting his own vegetable garden. The divine dragon struggled to look at Fang Yan's eyes. When a person made a move, his eyes were the first to react. Fang Yan looked like a brute. He wanted to walk up to the dragon god and give him a good beating. If his opponent was not the dragon god, he could indeed do so. But wasn't he joking now? Ku Fengming didn't think he was joking. He didn't walk in a straight line but in a curve. It looked like a rampage, but in reality it was a cycle. Every step left 3 changes, and the 3 changes could give rise to infinite changes. This was the true meaning of Taiji. 1 begets 2, 2 begets infinity. When Fang Yan spoke, it was Taiji. When he walked, it was Taiji. Every word and action was in line with the way of Taiji. Now Fang Yan and Taiji had merged into one. Taiji. Because of the continuous flow of vital energy, he looked energetic and energetic. This was the performance of the legendary Taiji water overflow realm. In the eyes of the divine dragon god, Fang Yan, who was striding towards him, looked full of loopholes. But if he dared to act rashly, then every loophole could be a real trap. Of course there would be loopholes. Everyone would have loopholes or dead ends. But when there were too many loopholes, you wouldn't know which loophole was the real one. When Fang Yan was 2 to 3 meters in front of the divine dragon god, he raised his right arm and gave a light slap. After that slap, Fang Yan's entire arm disappeared in midair. Under the gaze of Fang Yan and the divine dragon god, it turned into nothingness. At the same time, the divine dragon god slashed out with his sword. Like all the previous slashes, there was no shadow. This formed a strange scene. They were still standing in this world, but their clashing palms and swords seemed to have entered another world. There was no abnormality, nor was there the sound of metal clashing. But Fang Yan's right palm was madly slapping. Slap after slap, it was like a storm. The divine dragon god stabbed his sword again and again like will-the-wisp stars. Suddenly, there was a violent tearing sound in the space in front of them. Their hair was messed up by the strong wind, their clothes were blown backwards by the strong wind, and their facial features were distorted by the wind. Then the 2 of them suddenly flew backwards in the air. Boom, there was a violent explosion. After the explosion, a huge tornado appeared. The grass, branches, sand, and rocks on the ground that were not hard enough were all sucked into the eye of the tornado and disappeared in an instant. It was like a black hole that could swallow everything. As it spun faster and faster, more distant and larger objects were sucked in. This included Fang Yan Tenacious, who was fighting fiercely in the air, and Yi Rou and Gong Sun-Chi, who were watching from the side. Yi Rou did not move, but her feet had already sunk deep into the cracks of the stones. 2 deep holes the size of footprints appeared on the hard stone ground. Gong Sun-Chi's clothes flapped. His body leaned forward slightly to resist the suction of the tornado, and he looked like he was struggling. Fang Yan and the divine dragon god struggled to fight in the air. They turned into 2 shadows, one black and one white, and then 2 equally dark black dots. Finally, they merged into one and became a gale that was hard to be seen by the naked eye. Feng Mountain had a lot of wind and sand. Another sandstorm came from the north, covering the sky and covering the earth. It seemed like it was going to drown the whole world. Rustle. The terrifying sound of sand colliding rang in the air and instantly enveloped them. Fang Yan Tenacious ordered Yi Rou, Gong Sun-Chi, the whole Feng Mountain, and the people on Feng Mountain to become one with them. The whole world was gray, as if the end of the world was coming. At this moment, a huge lone eagle suddenly appeared in the middle of the sandstorm. No, how could a lone eagle appear in the middle of the sandstorm? It was more like a ghost hidden in a sandstorm, a demon that struck fear in people's hearts. Yi Rou, who had been watching the battle, suddenly became alert. Her sharp eyes penetrated the sandstorm and shouted anxiously, "Fang Yan, watch out." In the end, he was still a step too late. The black figure was hidden in the sandstorm. With the help of the cold wind that blew from the north, it charged towards Fang Yan and Fu Ming, who were fighting. Swish! The blazing white light lit up, and even the dense sand and dust that made it hard for people to open their eyes could not hide it. Boom! At the place where the white light came from, the sandstorm disappeared. Even the air seemed to have been purified. Soon, everything returned to normal. More sand and dust rushed over to fill the empty space. Chapter 843. The sandstorm grew stronger, as though countless flying insects were covering their heads. Looking up, they couldn't see the sky, and it was difficult to even open their eyes. It happened so suddenly that there were almost no signs. No one expected a third party to disrupt the battle between 2 Heavenly Dao Realm experts at the peak of Maple Mountain. Who was he? What was he trying to do? To kill 2 Heavenly Dao Realm experts in one fell swoop? Even if it was a sneak attack, it probably wasn't an easy task to accomplish such a grand goal, unless he was also a Heavenly Dao Realm expert. It was so blazing that it felt like a sun had suddenly emerged from beneath their feet. The white light illuminated the night sky, illuminating the entire Maple Mountain range as though it was daytime. The intense light was like a gigantic firework that disappeared in a flash, leaving behind a huge vacuum in midair. The sand in that area was dispersed without a trace, and even time seemed to have frozen. Humans could change nature, but they would ultimately be changed by nature. Soon the vacuum was filled with a deeper sandstorm. The sandstorm, which was rarely torn open, once again shrouded the world. It was so oppressive that it made it hard for people to breathe. Fang Yan, Yi Rou called out anxiously. She was the first to notice the anomaly in the sandstorm, but before she could do anything, the sandstorm had already lit up with a white light, as though someone had dropped an atomic bomb. When the white light vanished and the sandstorm continued, she flew towards the explosion site. Master. Although Gong Sun-Chi's reaction was slower than Yi Rou's, he knew what had happened since he had been paying attention to the battle. There was actually another person who dared to interfere in the battle between 2 Heavenly Dao Realm experts. Furthermore, he had charged into the battle without any qualms. Even if you're shameless, you should at least want your life, right? Through the previous exchange, Gong Sun-Chi knew how strong Fang Yan and his master Divine Dragon were. Even though he was in the periphery of the battlefield, he would occasionally be pressured and assaulted by the forces. It was enough to make him feel uneasy. If he were to fight Fang Yan or his master, he would probably be crushed to smithereens in a single round. This was the suppression of realms. You wouldn't even be able to see the trajectory of his attacks, and you would already have to bid farewell to the world. This was what happened after such cruelty. Didn't Fang Yan experience something like this when he fought with his master at the very beginning? Although the top of his head was once again covered by the sandstorm, it was as if nothing had happened. There was no white light and there was no explosion that resounded through the mountaintop. However, everything that had just happened was recorded on the ground of the explosion site. Not even a blade of grass grew and the rubble turned into powder. It was just like the sandpit that appeared in Oasis. There was no life in the sandpit except for the tiny grains of sand. There was no one either. Fang Yan and the dragon god disappeared. The third person who came with the sandstorm like a lone nighthawk also disappeared. Master, Master, Gong Sun Chi stood in the huge stone pit and shouted. He turned to look at Yi Ro and asked, where did they go? He knew that Yi Ro's realm was higher than his. She must know what he didn't know. Wait, Yi Ro said. What are we waiting for? Where did Master and the others go? Who was that man in black? How could he have the guts to disrupt this decisive battle? What happened just now? Gong Sun Chi didn't finish his words. Because he found that when he was speaking, the atmosphere at the scene became tense again. Two dark figures stood on the huge stones in the east and west directions in the distance. Because the sandstorm was too strong, the visibility was reduced, and it was impossible to see their facial expressions clearly. There was another person who landed not far from the sandpit and was looking at Yi Ro with a smile. Are you okay? Yi Ro looked at Fang Yan and asked. I'm fine. Fang Yan shook his head with a smile. This drama is getting more and more exciting. Gong Sun Chi looked at Fang Yan and asked, Fang Yan, who was the guy who sneaked up on us? I don't know who it was, Fang Yan said with a smile. But you will know soon. Gong Sun Chi wanted to ask more, but he found that Fang Yan had turned to face the two men in black on the east and west sides. He felt a little disappointed. After all, he wasn't qualified to be an opponent at their level. Fang Yan looked at the black shadow shrouded in a black robe in the west and said with a smile, there aren't many people in this world who would dare disrupt a battle between two heavenly Dao realm experts. And there might only be one person who would have such black-bellied thoughts. Mr. Black Dragon. I've admired you for a long time. Are you still unwilling to take off your black robe and let us fans see your true appearance? The black-robed man in the east said with a hoarse voice, like the sound of sand colliding in the air, even if I were to take off my mask and let you see my true appearance, how would you know who I am? Fang Yan was taken aback and said, I don't know, but someone else will know. Divine Dragon seemed to be in a good mood despite his hard work. He said in a relaxed tone, I've never seen Black Dragon's true appearance either. I'm afraid there aren't many people in this world who have seen it, right? All you need to know is that I'm Black Dragon. Black Dragon's tone was as arrogant as ever. Anything else is meaningless to you. That's true. Fang Yan nodded with a smile. Since you have already admitted that you are Black Dragon, then your identity is confirmed. Mr. Black Dragon, you wish to kill us? That's right. Black Dragon answered without hiding anything. Why? Fang Yan asked. Don't you think that there are too many Heavenly Dao Realm experts? Black Dragon said with a serious look. Of course, you couldn't see his expression, but you could tell from his tone that he was asking this question in an extremely serious manner. There are more and more people and things are getting more and more noisy. It's really a little vexing. If we can kick two of them out at once, wouldn't this world be a lot quieter? Fang Yan thought about it seriously as he looked at Divine Dragon and said with great difficulty, I think what he said makes a lot of sense. Didn't you have the same thoughts back then? Back then, the three of you were the most dazzling warriors in all of Wuxia. Black Dragon appeared and disappeared mysteriously, making it difficult to find his tracks. It was even more difficult for him to resist your influence in the mortal world. Only the Azure Dragon Mo Qingdi had the same feelings and ambitions as you, and his influence far exceeded yours. You challenged the Azure Dragon and tore his tendons. The Azure Dragon perished, and for decades, you were the only one shining in the sky like the only star in this world. Divine Dragon's expression was solemn as he pondered for a moment, nodded and said, Back then I hadn't seen through the desire for fame and fortune, so I still ended up in a disadvantageous position. Men leave their names behind and geese leave their voices behind. Life is short, not more than 100 years. Who doesn't want to leave something in this world for future generations to remember? For the title of number one in the world, there are plenty of people who would sever their opponent's limbs and kill their entire family, much less tore off their opponent's tendons. Compared to those people, you are already considered benevolent. Divine Dragon looked at Fang Yan and said, The Azure Dragon doesn't think so. Of course. Fang Yan nodded with absolute certainty and said, If I were the Azure Dragon, I would definitely want to take revenge and kill your entire family. You see, no matter what level we've reached, no matter what realm we've stepped into, we're still mere mortals. We can't let go of fame and fortune, nor can we let go of grudges, Divine Dragon said with a smile. If someone scolds me, I'll respond with a sentence. If someone punches me, I'll return with a few kicks. Is this considered the heavenly axiom? Fang Yan asked. Divine Dragon thought for a moment and said, following the heavenly axiom is naturally the heavenly axiom. Naturally, this is the highest achievement of our Tai Chi, Fang Yan said with a smile. So, I've never felt that it's a dirty and shameful thing to take revenge on someone who has a grudge against them. On the contrary, those who bear a blood feud would abandon it in the name of the heavenly axiom, losing their passion and temperament and going against the heavenly axiom. You're a sentimental person, Divine Dragon said. But, Fang Yan looked at the Black Dragon and said, we have no grudge against him, yet he came here to kill us. Isn't this too much of a bully? For his own axiom he wants to destroy our axiom? Is this also the heavenly axiom? Divine Dragon calmly looked at the Black Dragon and said, this is not the heavenly axiom, this is the demonic axiom. The sword in your hand is called Exorcist, then let's use this Exorcist sword to get rid of this demon, Fang Yan suggested. You knew I was coming? The Black Dragon solemnly asked. He used a special concealment method to conceal himself. Even his breathing and heartbeat could not be heard. Moreover, the sandstorm tonight was extremely strong. He had adjusted the frequency of his movement to match the speed of the sandstorm. There was a 90% chance of a successful sneak attack, so how could he be intercepted by the two of them at the most crucial moment? If they hadn't known in advance, how could they have simultaneously stopped at the critical moment and drawn his Gale Tempest Bringer over? If his Gale Tempest Guide had enveloped their bodies in the sandstorm, or exploded right next to them, Fang Yan and Divine Dragon would be either dead or heavily injured. But they managed to dodge it, and their combined attack made him suffer in silence. Although he managed to dodge Divine Dragon's desperate strike, his back was slapped by that bastard Fang Yan. Even now, his qi and blood were still in turmoil, and he couldn't circulate his energy smoothly. That was why the Black Dragon asked such a question. Fang Yan laughed heartily and said, we're the male and female leads of this show, and you're the best supporting actor. Although the best supporting actor appeared a little late, I knew he would definitely appear. Chapter 844. When Fang Yan mentioned that there would be new friends joining them, Divine Dragon was doubtful as well. What puzzled him was that this was a battle between Heavenly Dao Realm experts. Typical warriors would be injured just by approaching slightly, much less joining. This was also the reason why they didn't announce the location of the battle. Instead, they chose the most dangerous peak of Mt. Maple. They didn't wish for the curious commoners to climb up only to be blown back down by a gust of wind. Even his disciple Gong Sun Chi didn't have the right to join. Forcefully taking action would only be asking for trouble. Then how many people in the world had the right to participate in the battle at Flying Peak? Divine Dragon's first reaction was to hope that Azure Dragon wouldn't underestimate his enemy. Could it be that Azure Dragon had returned from the land of extreme frost? Had he really found the legendary and extremely rare Ice Dragon bloodline? Of course, Fang Yan also had some trust in Fang Yan. At their realm, there was no need for meaningless lies to deceive others. They came, they came. They didn't. Playing petty tricks would only make them look down on them. It wouldn't be of any use. However, he never expected that someone would really come. Furthermore, it was one of the three dragons of Wuxia, Black Dragon, who was equally as famous as him. Upon hearing Black Dragon's question, Divine Dragon wished to know why Fang Yan would have such a guess. It's because your reason for coming to kill us isn't simple. Fang Yan said with a smile. If it's just because you think there are too many Heavenly Dao Realm experts, which is why you want to kick out too, then I would think that you are a man, the most admirable person I have ever seen in my life. Clearly not. Before you came to Mt. Maple, the generals Jiang Shifu met you. Isn't that so? Black Dragon fell silent for a long while before saying, there's no such thing as an impenetrable wall in this world. I shouldn't be surprised that you know this secret. How much did he give you? Fang Yan said with a smile. To be able to bribe a Heavenly Dao Realm expert to be a fighter for the generals, he must have invested quite a bit, right? If everyone's goal is the same, then everything else is secondary, Black Dragon said in a deep voice. I don't like you. So I'm going to kill you. You're right. Although your motives aren't pure, it's also a fact that you think there are too many Heavenly Dao Realm experts. After all, in just a few months, Heavenly Tao Realm experts have sprung up like bamboo shoots after the rain. Our Feng family has 2 more. At this point, Feng Yan looked back at Yi Rou sweetly. It felt good to have a strong support behind him no matter what he did. In the past, he was afraid of the dragon god and hoped that he would never run into him before the old drunkard Mo Qingdi returned. The first time he met the dragon god in the courtyard of the Xian division, his little heart was beating very fast. He was afraid that the dragon god would kill him with a sword. Now he was at the Taiji water overflow realm while his fiancée Yiwen was at the Heavenly Tao realm. As long as the 2 of them were together, no matter if it was the dragon god or the undying black dragon, he would not feel the slightest bit of fear in his heart. Even if the 2 of them joined forces, of course that was impossible. Are you showing off? Black Dragon looked at Feng Yan and asked. The north wind howled and the sand and stones made a rustling sound. However, the conversation between the 3 of them was not affected at all. It was as if they were chatting in the backyard of a private house with beautiful weather. Showing off. Feng Yan grinned and said, if you say it's showing off, then it's showing off. You're the elder, I'll listen to you. Black Dragon was silent for a few seconds again. He looked at the dragon god and said, Junior apprentice brother, it seems like we've been too low-key all these years. Even these kids who haven't even grown out their fur can look down on us. Junior apprentice brother? Feng Yan looked at the dragon god in shock, then at the black dragon. The 2 of them were actually apprentice brothers? Why hadn't he heard of it before? If they were really apprentice brothers, then what kind of dire situation would it be today? This was a question that Feng Yan had to consider. Not only Feng Yan but even Yi Rou and Gong Sunqi were astonished. Yi Rou pricked up her eyebrows and silently stood behind Feng Yan. Regardless, they had 2 Heavenly Tao Realm experts on their side. If they were to really fight it out, the outcome was still unknown. Even if they couldn't beat them, escaping wouldn't be a difficult task. However, why did the dragon god have to be Black Dragon's apprentice brother? If such news were to spread, wouldn't it cause a stir in the entire martial arts world? Gong Sunqi's mouth opened wide, but he suddenly thought of something and hurriedly closed his mouth. It wouldn't be good if Master saw it. But why did he have an uncle master? And this uncle master was Black Dragon of the 3 Dragons of Wuxia? Black Dragon of the 3 Dragons of Wuxia and Divine Dragon of the 3 Dragons of Wuxia were apprentice brothers. Then what was the secret behind Azure Dragon's death? Gong Sunqi wasn't the only one with such thoughts. Feng Yan and Yi Rou had the same thought. 2 of the 3 dragons were apprentice brothers, and the only Azure Dragon had been defeated by Divine Dragon. Everyone felt that there was something fishy going on. Divine Dragon clearly didn't expect Black Dragon to expose their relationship at this moment. He sighed and said, Nanxuan, why do you have to do this? We haven't seen each other for years. At our age, the title of apprentice brother has long vanished. Why mention this in front of these children? No matter how long it's been, apprentice brother is still apprentice brother. Don't you want to acknowledge me as your apprentice brother? Black Dragon's voice was filled with mockery. But it's true. In terms of martial cultivation, apprentice brother is a latecomer. Makes me feel ashamed. Nanxuan, did you rush over just to catch up with me? Of course not. Black Dragon Li Nanxuan laughed. His voice was like the chirping of a night bird. It was hard to hear. Back then, apprentice brother helped me defeat Mo Qingdi and picked out his tendons, turning him into a cripple. I haven't had the chance to thank apprentice brother properly. There's no need for thanks. Go down the mountain. Divine Dragon said in a deep voice. I can't leave for now. Black Dragon Li Nanxuan wasn't angered. He lifted the hat on his head, revealing a pale and ugly face that left a deep impression. This was because there was a big black hole on both sides of his cheeks, as if something sharp had pierced through them. His eyes were turbid, but they were extremely sharp, like a pair of rusty copper needles. When he looked at you, it would make you feel extremely uncomfortable. This was very different from other Heavenly Tao Realm experts who reverted to their original state. Black Dragon Li Nanxuan looked at Feng Yan and said, At least, let me finish what I promised to do first. Divine Dragon tried his best to stop him and said, You know that this is the final battle between me and Feng Yan. I know. Black Dragon Li Nanxuan nodded and said, That's why I came. I wanted to take the opportunity to kill this punk, but I didn't expect him to be prepared. However, since I'm here, how can I return empty-handed? Why are you in such a hurry to kill me? Fang Yan looked at Li Nanxuan and asked. I don't want to kill you. I just want to kill Azure Dragon again. Don't underestimate your enemy. Li Nanxuan's eyes burned like a blazing fire. Even the sand and stones that covered the sky could not hide it. Unfortunately, he didn't return. Since he didn't return, it proved that he died in the land of extreme frost. I can't take revenge on him, so I can only take revenge on his family. I've been waiting for you to grow faster and mature, to become everyone's hope, to become the rising star of Neijiang. Then at that time I'll kill you. I wish for you to grow, but I don't wish for you to grow to a height that makes people lose control. So when I learned that those ox noses wanted to teach you the Taiji diagram, I barged into Monkey Mountain to snatch it and destroy it. I never expected that you would be the one to benefit from it. Doesn't it feel good to enter the water overflow realm? I quite like it. Fang Yan looked at Li Nanxuan thoughtfully and said, the wound on your face was stabbed by don't underestimate your enemy. Punk, you're courting death. Li Nanxuan roared angrily. His energy leaked out and sent the surrounding sand and stones flying. With him as the center, not a single stone could be seen in a radius of several meters. Looks like I guessed correctly. Fang Yan said with a smile, let me guess again. Back then when you fought with Mo Qingdi, you were pierced in the cheek by Mo Qingdi's spear. As for whether you entered from the left and exited from the right, I don't know. But it changed your appearance, even your voice was affected. No wonder you wear a black robe and a thick hat all day. It's because you're too ugly and you're afraid of scaring people, right? Also, the way you talk, it sounds like you have sand in your mouth and you're rubbing it. Has anyone ever told you that your voice sounds awful? Fang Yan, I will kill you today. Li Nanxuan's body flashed with white light. This was the special way of using stellar chi wind and lightning guide. Fang Yan sneered and looked at Li Nanxuan fearlessly. Since you're here, do you still want to leave? Haha, just you. Li Nanxuan seemed to have heard a very funny joke. How about adding me as well? A hearty voice rang out. Chapter 845. Plus me, how about that? The man's voice was thick and heavy, but because of the irrepressible joy and anticipation in his emotions, the way he spoke gave people a hearty and heroic feeling. Under everyone's gaze, a white figure was striding up from halfway up the mountain. The mountain was high and dangerous, but he walked like it was flat ground. The thorny bushes and the boulders blocking the way did not pose any threat to him at all. All it did was make his steps more graceful and light. The way he walked was like a beautiful dance, making people want to dance to his beat. When you first saw him, he seemed very far away, just a tiny white dot in the middle of the mountain. When you blink and look again, he is a little closer to you. When you looked again, he was a little closer. The white dot became a ball of light, and the ball of light became a phantom. When he stood in front of you, the image of an extraordinary and stalwart man gradually became clear. Then he became the person in everyone's memory, the person who made people's eyes redden and hearts beat faster. Do not underestimate the enemy. One of the 3 dragons of Wuxia. Do not underestimate the enemy. Do not underestimate the enemy who conquered the whole of Wuxia with one spear. Do not underestimate the enemy who challenged the whole of the world without losing a single battle. He was the most talented warrior and also the most dazzling star. He once won the whole era but was also abandoned by that era. After that unparalleled battle with the dragon god, his tendons in his hand were broken by the dragon god, and he became a cripple. The dragon do not underestimate the enemy fell and hid in Swallow Dock, becoming an old drunkard who was talked about and ridiculed by people. 4 years ago, in order to repair his pulse, he listened to the words of the medical fanatic Qin Wuxia, and went to the extreme cold to search for the legendary ice dragon. Everyone thought that this was his alternative way of hiding from the world. Once he left, there was no news of him, and it was feared that they would never meet again. What no one expected was that he came back. At such a crucial moment. Do not underestimate the enemy. The dragon god was slightly surprised. Even with his cultivation and temperament, he could not help but be surprised when he saw the opponent in front of him, whom he had knocked down from the altar. He knew his swordsmanship, and he also knew how much damage he had done to his arm. If he wanted to cut off a person's tendons, even if that person hid both hands in a safe, it would be useless. He was confident in his swordsmanship. Therefore, when his gaze once again fell upon the long spear in the hands of the azure dragon Mo Qingdi, he had a very surreal feeling. His tendons really healed? His body really recovered? His cultivation had returned to its peak state again? Black Dragon Li Nanxuan cackled loudly. His hoarse voice contained an unconcealable hatred. Don't underestimate me, you actually didn't die? You still dare to come back? Gong Sun Chi's eyes widened as he stared at the intruder. Don't underestimate the enemy. Back then he was able to stand shoulder to shoulder with Master and be known as a brilliant figure? Oh my god, he's so young and he looks quite handsome. He has a unique manly charm, he looks much better than my master. I really envy Fang Yan, because he had met the 3 divine dragons of Wuxia. He had met all 3 legendary figures. It was said that collecting 3 dragons could be exchanged for a Dragon Ball. Because he had seen the 3 divine dragons of China, the 3 legendary figures, all at once. It was said that collecting 3 dragons could be exchanged for a Dragon Ball. Mo Qingdi did not care about the dragon god, nor did he care about the black dragon Li Nanxuan. He was wearing a white robe made of animal fur, stained with mud and blood and weathered by the sun and the wind. He was wearing a white robe made of animal fur. The white robe was stained with mud and blood. It was weathered by the wind and the sun, so it looked a little old and rotten. Of course, this was different from being wrapped in powder because his white was so natural, crystal clear and shone with a healthy luster. Of course, this was different from wrapping powder because his whiteness was so natural, sparkling and translucent, shining with a healthy luster. Of course, this was different from being wrapped in powder because his white was so natural, crystal clear and shone with a healthy luster. Red blood flowed out of the blue vessels. The blue veins were clearly visible and so was the blood. The flowing blood gave off a sense of vitality. The current Mo Qingdi was very different from the Mo Qingdi who had fallen. The current Mo Qingdi looked very graceful and very strange. At least Fang Yan thought it was a bit inappropriate. He was originally a rustic Chinese character. How did he suddenly turn into a handsome man with snow-white skin? There was already one person in the family who walked the path of an idol. What was going on with another? All the men in the family are pretty boys, outsiders will bully us if they see us. Mo Qingdi's eyes were fixed on Fang Yan and Fang Yan's eyes were also fixed on Mo Qingdi. They looked at each other and smiled. There was a familiar tacit understanding and an indescribable kinship between them. As they smiled, Fang Yan's eyes became moist. He rubbed his eyes and said angrily, I told you at the time, this place is not suitable for a duel. The sandstorm is so strong that I can't even open my eyes. You're crying? Mo Qingdi said with a smile. Old drunkard, what are you talking about? Fang Yan was so angry that he tried to deny it. You're the one who's crying. I told you it's the sand in my eyes. You're crying. Azure Dragon Mo Qingdi carefully observed Fang Yan's expression and said with certainty. Hey, are you done yet? I'm a water overflow realm master now. Do you believe that I won't beat you up? Good. Mo Qingdi grinned and said, You're doing very well. I've been doing very well. How about you? Fang Yan looked at Mo Qingdi and said, You're looking very good too. I'm also doing very well. Mo Qingdi nodded and looked into Fang Yan's eyes, his face full of love and joy. All along his relationship with Fang Yan had been very vague. They were like brothers, like close friends, like drinking buddies, but also like a master and a disciple. Fang Yan was the closest person to him in this world. Fang Yan also grew up under his gaze and grew up under his guidance. Because of Fang Yixing's abandonment of martial arts for literature. Although Fang Yan's master was Fang Hui, the person who truly taught Fang Yan the most and influenced Fang Yan the most was Mo Qingdi. If not for the nurturing and guidance of such a heavenly Tao realm master, perhaps Fang Yan wouldn't have been able to understand the heart of Taiji at that age. Without the help of the heart of Taiji, how could Fang Yan have stepped into the water overflow realm so quickly? Although the land of extreme frost is a little cold, under the care of my friends, life is still considered comfortable. When I'm hungry, there's nutritious food and fresh fruits. When I'm thirsty, there's ice spring and lava. When I'm cold, there's a mattress and coat made of animal fur. Some things can't even be bought in Yanjing City, they're very rare. I've brought some back for you as a present. Fang Yan squinted his eyes and smiled, saying, Looks like you're quite popular to be able to receive the care of a friend in a place like the land of extreme frost. Mo Qingdi nodded and said, Yes. It was also with the help of that friend that I found the ice dragon bloodline. Fang Yan's eyes instantly lit up. He excitedly said, I knew you could do it. You really did it. Does that mean your meridians have been reconnected? They've been reconnected, Mo Qingdi said. You've recovered? I've recovered, Emo Qingdi answered again. That's great. Fang Yan laughed heartily, laughing so hard that he rocked back and forth, tears spilling from his eyes. That's great, our Fang clan has 3 heavenly Dao. Does this count as the #1 clan in Inner Jianghu? Let's see who dares to bully us in the future. Those who bully us will definitely bully them back. Emo Qingdi also laughed, but his smile was a little sorrowful. There were too many grievances in his heart and too much suffering. There was also the regret that could never be made up for. After his death, the Fang clan had gone through too many trials and tribulations. Fortunately, at that time Fang Yan did not let them down. Through his own hard work, he made sure that no one dared to say or do anything too outrageous to the Fang clan. However, Fang Yixing's tragic death was a huge boulder that weighed on the hearts of every member of the Fang clan. If only he hadn't fallen into depravity, if only he hadn't become a worthless drunkard. Would that mean that Fang Yixing would not die? Grievances could be poured out, hatred could be purged. But the dead cannot be brought back to life. Fang Yixing was his elder brother, his family. But he couldn't do anything about his departure. Traveling to the Arctic lands was already a journey of death. Coincidentally, he met the ice dragon and finally returned with his full strength. How much sorrow and unspeakable joy did he experience during this journey? Seeing Fang Yan laughing, seeing Fang Yan crying, how could he not want to be like him, first laughing then crying? But he couldn't. As long as he was alive, he had to shoulder the burden of the clan. As long as he could stand up, he had to stand in front of Fang Yan, protect him from the wind and rain and help him kill the demons. He was Fang Yan's guardian angel. As long as he was alive, it would not be Fang Yan's turn to shoulder all the responsibilities of the clan. Their generation had their responsibilities. When he died, it would be Fang Yan's turn to carry the Fang clan's banner. He could understand Fang Yan's feelings. He knew that he was excited but also relieved. It was too hard for him to walk, too hard for him. He needed someone to share his burden and he hoped that someone could fight alongside him. In Emo Qingdi's eyes, Fang Yan was still a child. He was his own child. His own child was bullied and wronged outside. This was something that no parent could tolerate. Emo Qingdi looked at Fang Yan and said softly, I will kill whoever dares to kill you. I will kill whoever you want to kill. Chapter 846. When parents go on a long journey, they always bring some gifts for their eagerly awaited children at home. Some parents bring toys, some bring candy, but what Emo Qingdi brought to Fang Yan was endless trust and support. I'll kill whoever dares to kill you. Whoever you want to kill, I'll kill. Fang Yan didn't hesitate at all. As long as he said the word, Emo Qingdi would kill everyone on top of the flying peak without hesitation. Of course, Yiro was an exception. If he asked the old drunkard to kill Yiro, he would probably be the first to be killed. Killing is not urgent. Fang Yan wiped away his tears, looked at Emo Qingdi and asked, which friend of yours? Did he come back with you? I want to buy him a drink. He came back, Emo Qingdi said softly. There was a warm smile on his face, like a husband thinking of his beautiful wife. In all honesty, this was the first time Fang Yan saw such a smile on the old drunkard's face. He didn't know why, but he felt a little sour in his heart, a little jealous. As soon as he finished speaking, a white shadow darted across the sky and stopped right in front of Fang Yan. The shadow glared at Fang Yan and the rest of the humans in front of him. This little transparent dog sensed danger and hostility. Fang Yan stared at it with widened eyes and asked, the friend you were talking about, is it it? That's it, Emo Qingdi said with absolute certainty. It's so ugly. Fang Yan was stunned for a long time, then commented. Pft. The little transparent dog spat out a bone from its mouth. Pft. The little transparent dog spat out another bone. Pft. The little transparent dog spat out a third bone. Fang Yan looked at Emo Qingdi and asked, what does it mean? It's talking to you. Emo Qingdi acted as the communication bridge between Fang Yan and the little transparent dog. You're the ugly one. Pft. Yiro couldn't hold it in any longer. Her lips curled up into a sweet and pure smile. Gong Sunqi's mouth twitched, but when he thought that his master and that martial uncle who appeared out of nowhere were still staring at them, he quickly held back his laughter and put on a coffin face as if this joke was not funny at all. Fang Yan stared wide-eyed at Emo Qingdi and said, are you kidding me? How does it know what I'm saying? Puff. The transparent puppy spat at Fang Yan again, but this time there were no bones. Puff. It spat out 2 more mouthfuls. This time Fang Yan really believed it. He bared his teeth at the transparent dog and said, "Stop it. From today on you and I are brothers. Don't worry, I won't despise you for being a dog." Puff. The ice dragon sprayed water at Fang Yan again. "It doesn't agree," Emoching explained helplessly. "Are you kidding me?" Fang Yan was furious. He never thought that one day he would be despised by a dog. "I'm warning you, I don't know what kind of dog you are. Now that you're in Yanjing, do as the Romans do. Do what I tell you to do. Otherwise your life will be..." Puff. A brown fruit core flew towards Fang Yan's face. Fang Yan tilted his head, and the core flew into a large stone in the distance. The fruit box sank into the inner wall of the stone, and only a small dark hole could be seen outside. This scene made everyone's heart jump. This strange-looking puppy had only casually spat out a fruit pit, yet it had such great power. If it wanted to hurt people, most people wouldn't be its opponent, right? Gong Sun Chi looked at the transparent dog, then thought about his own martial arts and wondered what his chances of winning were if he were to fight with it. It really hurt his pride. The dragon god looked at the transparent dog in horror and asked aloud, "This is the legendary ice dragon?" "Yes," Emoching nodded. "It is the ice dragon." The black dragon's eyes flashed, and it looked at the ice dragon like a vulture, full of greed and cruelty. Fang Yan looked at the ice dragon again and asked, "If it is the ice dragon, then your body?" Fang Yan's question hit the nail on the head of Emoching's hesitation. At that time he was indeed faced with a dilemma. The ice dragon was his savior. If he killed the ice dragon to restore his meridians, then he would be a heartless person. But if he didn't kill the ice dragon, then his meridians would never recover, and he would never be able to leave that land of extreme cold. Later he found the hidden cave behind the ice dragon's mountain, and inside he found the remains of the ice dragon clan that was guarded by the ice dragon. He didn't know what expression he had when he saw the ice sculptures, but he clearly saw the ice dragon's angry roar. The 2 men confronted each other in the ice cave for a long time, and then the ice dragon launched an attack. They had engaged in a fierce battle, and even the entire cave where the remains were buried had cracked because of it. The avalanche buried the entire mountain where they had lived for a long time. In the end they desperately escaped, and Emoching completely gave up. Because he knew that he had hurt the ice dragon, and he also knew that he couldn't go back into the ice mountain to steal the remains. He was afraid that the deep cave where they fought had sunk deep into the ground, and it would be impossible for them to see the world again. But the thought that he would live forever in the land of extreme cold, and that his family in Yanjing would be in all kinds of danger, made it difficult for him to sleep. Unexpectedly, the transparent dog seemed to have seen through Emoching's thoughts. One sleepless night, it used its mouth to pull on the corner of Emoching's clothes, and pulled him into another cave. In that small cave, there were only 3 bodies of the ice dragon, but each one was several times larger than the one he saw in the big cave. Emoching looked at the transparent dog's eyes and understood what he meant. The transparent dog whined a few times and then walked out alone. Emoching was moved to tears and used a knife to cut open the body of an ice dragon. The medical fanatic Qin Wujia did not lie to him. The ice dragon's meridians did have the effect of repairing the meridians, because after it entered his body, it melted together with the boiling ice dragon's blood, and then began to repair and open up some of the key areas that were previously injured or blocked. Emoching slept in the ice cave for 3 days, and then intermittently used the ice dragon's blood according to the method secretly taught by the medical fanatic Qin Wujia. Every time it was used, it was like a nirvana rebirth, and every nirvana was like being burned in a fire. Until he could feel the flow of air, until he once again experienced the power he once had, he decided to go home. He decided to bring the transparent dog home. In this land of extreme cold, he only had this dog as his family. It was the same as him. If he left, then it would be all alone in this world, looking just like a dog. Emoching and it had a simple discussion, not sure if it understood, but the 2 of them packed their bags and set off on their way home. Fortunately, it was not too late and they made it in time. "My body has recovered." Emoching naturally did not want to explain too much to Fang Yan here and said, "It's mainly because of it." As if it understood that Emoching was praising it, the transparent dog glanced proudly at Fang Yan, and then wagged its little tail as it paced back and forth in front of Fang Yan. Mo Qingdi looked at it lovingly and said to Fang Yan, "It looks exactly like you." Fang Yan felt like he had received multiple blows and insults. Yi Wenro stood beside Fang Yan and said to Mo Qingdi, "Welcome back." Mo Qingdi looked at Yi Wenro with a smile and said, "From now on we are a family." Yi Wenro nodded and said, "In the past as well." Mo Qingdi laughed loudly and said, "In the past as well. Unfortunately I did not see it." Mo Qingdi, are you done with your nonsense? Black Dragon Li Nanxuan was getting impatient, and his voice was like an unsheathed sword, full of coldness and bloodlust. "An old friend is here, are you not going to greet us?" Mo Qingdi finally looked up at the Black Dragon and asked, "You hate me?" The Black Dragon's voice was very ear-piercing. He laughed for a long time before stopping and pointing at the two black holes on his face he said, "Mo Qingdi, you can't have forgotten whose work this is, right? I stabbed you." Mo Qingdi had no intention of denying it. He seriously looked at the ugly face of the Black Dragon Li Nanxuan, and said, "In the past, we were both candidates for the guardian of the diagram of Tai Chi. In order to obtain the diagram of Tai Chi, you repeatedly attacked me. When I was entering the Monkey Mountain, you tried to kill me on the way, so I stabbed you. Originally I wanted to stab your head, but I did not expect your reaction to be so fast. At that critical moment, you managed to avoid the temple and only let me stab your cheek. I always thought you were too ashamed to admit this, but I did not expect you to keep it in your heart and nag at everyone you see. You have no shame because your face is ruined?" Mo Qingdi, the Black Dragon, flew into a rage. He struck out with his palm and a white ball of light flew towards where Mo Qingdi was standing. It was the tempest of wind and lightning that he was an expert in, and it was only a probing attack. The transparent dog lightly leaped and swallowed the ball of light into its stomach. Gulp. When the transparent dog swallowed the ball of light, there was a loud swallowing sound coming from its throat. Mo Qingdi helplessly looked at the transparent dog and said with infinite affection, "I have told you many times, not everything can be eaten." Chapter 847. After the transparent dog ate the stellar energy wind and lightning bringer, it spat out a few mouthfuls of saliva. Every mouthful of saliva emitted a fire-colored gas that rose into the air. After spitting, it cuddled Mo Qingdi's thigh like a playful child. Its tongue was red from the heat and white liquid dripped out from it from time to time. It looked pathetic and adorable at the same time. Everyone was astonished by this scene. As one of the three dragons, Li Nanxuan's strength was unfathomable. Although his attack just now was a probing attack against Mo Qingdi, if Mo Qingdi did not counterattack or neutralize it, the energy contained within the ball of light would have torn him to shreds. Such a powerful primordial chi bullet was swallowed by a dog? The so-called adverse reaction was no more than a few mouthfuls of smoky saliva? Then what realm was this dog's strength? The Heavenly Tao realm? Or the divine transformation realm that no one had ever reached above the Heavenly Tao realm? Although the ice dragon looked like a dog, it did indeed have the genes of the unattainable divine dragon bloodline in its body. Fang Yan knew that even he could not swallow the black dragon's stellar energy wind and lightning bringer into his stomach. After all, he was not a dog. He had a more ingenious way to deal with it. Fang Yan had an absolute advantage in terms of intelligence over the transparent dog that only knew how to act coquettishly. Mo Qingdi rubbed the transparent dog's head, expressing his sincere consolation. The transparent dog glanced at Fang Yan smugly, meaning, "Look at how likable I am, but you can't." Dark Dragon Li Nanxuan stared at the little transparent dog for a while with a scorching gaze. Then he laughed out loud and said, "Don't underestimate your enemy. I didn't expect you to bring back such a powerful helper from your trip to the land of extreme coldness. Do you want this dog to help you fight in the decisive battle?" Li Nanxuan had no choice but to consider such a problem. If he wanted to kill Mo Qingdi, then he would have to face the combined attack of the man and dog. At that time he would not be able to deal with them. Why not? Mo Qingdi's voice was calm as he spoke. "If you're willing, you can also find a few dogs to help you in the battle. A pack of dogs is fine too." Puff. The little transparent dog blew bubbles at Li Nanxuan. It still bore a grudge against Li Nanxuan for throwing those disgusting things at it. Black Dragon Li Nanxuan was exasperated. He sneered and said, "I haven't seen you for a few years. I wonder if your "don't underestimate the enemy" skill has improved. Your skin has become much thicker. He was no fool. Even if he found 100 dogs, they still wouldn't be able to fight against the ice dragon by Mo Qingdi's side. If two heavenly Dao realm experts were to fight, wouldn't he become a laughingstock if a bunch of hounds died beneath their feet? Mo Qingdi glanced at the divine dragon and said, "According to your standards, isn't it shameless to use a sword against an opponent who is bare-handed?" Black Dragon Li Nanshuan's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He looked at the divine dragon and said, "Junior brother, it seems that they are clearly going to bully us. If that's the case, you and I will join forces and fight them to the death. Back then we were able to defeat them with our swords. Now we can do the same." The divine dragon's face was calm, unaffected by the rapidly changing environment. He looked at Fang Yan with a gentle gaze and asked, "Do you want to continue with the battle?" Fang Yan nodded and said with a smile, "Of course. Then let us continue. Everything else has nothing to do with you and me." The divine dragon gripped his sword and said in a low voice, "That's exactly what I wanted." Fang Yan said. The azure dragon Mo Qingdi looked at the black dragon and said, "Back then I only managed to pierce your face. I've always felt regretful. This time I won't make the same mistake." Kikik. Black Dragon Li Nanshuan laughed maniacally. "Don't underestimate the enemy. Do you think you're still the same? Do you think I'm still the same? You've been a good-for-nothing all these years. Even if your meridians were reconnected, do you think you can return to your peak state? Besides, so what if you've returned to your peak state? Don't you know that everyone in this world can improve? All these years there hasn't been a day that I haven't thought about it, there hasn't been a day that I haven't worked hard. Even if you're still at your peak state, I'll still defeat you with my sword. Not to mention that you can't return to your peak state after your meridians were reconnected. You know this better than anyone else. You're just bluffing, you talk too much." Mo Qingdi grumbled and charged toward the rock that Black Dragon Li Nanshuan was standing on with his spear. His huge body was like a moving hill. Every step he took crushed the hard rock into powder. Halfway through his run, he leaped high into the air. Like a giant god in white descending from the sky, he wielded a sharp weapon that could cut through the sky and stab toward the black figure on the rock. In the eyes of the black dragon, the spear grew larger and larger. It was as if what Mo Qingdi was holding was not a spear, but a tree so wide that it would take two people to wrap their arms around it. It was a giant pillar that supported the southern heavenly gate. But the sharpness of the spear grew smaller and smaller, until it was as thin as a needle. He had no doubt that the spear could easily pierce through his cheek or head, just like the spear that had pierced out 20 years ago. He hadn't changed. He was still Mo Qingdi. The moment the spear struck, it shook the heavens and the earth. Boom! Before the tip of the spear reached the rock beneath Black Dragon Li Nanshuan's feet, unable to withstand the boundless energy, shattered into pieces. There was nothing beneath Black Dragon Li Nanshuan's feet to support him. His body was still floating in the air. His body didn't move at all, as if the rock beneath his feet hadn't shattered and was still beneath his feet. He couldn't move. Once he moved, he would reveal an opening. Once an opening appeared, he would be either wounded or dead. The spear was close, right at the tip of his nose. His head was about to be pierced through by the spear. No, if he were to be attacked by such a powerful force, his entire head would probably explode. The current Mo Qingdi had changed a little from the Mo Qingdi of the past. The Mo Qingdi of the past emphasized elegance and calmness, and would never waste an ounce of energy. His control over his body had reached the realm of divinity. The current Mo Qingdi was even more tyrannical and biting cold. His method of attack was reckless and relentless. The Mo Qingdi of the past could accurately pierce through a person's head with the same spear. It was possible that the person would still be unconscious when they were pierced. But now, Mo Qingdi would brutally smash a person's head, like a watermelon that had been smashed with great force, or a bomb that had been detonated by someone. The aesthetics of extreme violence. The black dragon finally moved. No, it should be said that he had moved a long time ago. How could he tolerate someone pointing a spear at the tip of his nose? Even if he still had a way to fight back, he couldn't tolerate such an insult. What stopped where he was only an afterimage. With a speed faster than the naked eye could follow, he leapt in front of Mo Qingdi. A flash of silver light. The silver light was like a silver sickle, silently slicing towards Mo Qingdi's neck. The spear was tyrannical, suitable for long-range attacks. However, when the enemy invaded the main gate of your family, trying to rescue them would be a burden. Just like the current Azure Dragon Mo. His spear thrust was earth-shattering. The long spear was wrapped in an invincible and piercingly cold qi, dragging his body forward. But at this crucial moment, the black dragon Li Nanxuan had sneaked into his inner courtyard and was about to cut off his head. Just like a heavily guarded courtyard, if a thief had already infiltrated the inner courtyard, what was the point of setting up more machine guns and cannons outside? Sure enough, the current Mo was in danger of not being able to save himself. Mo, the black dragon Li Nanxuan was holding an illusory long sword in his hand. It looked like a flickering silver light tube. Die, whoosh, the long sword slashed towards Mo neck. It missed. There was no lingering and refreshing sensation of a sharp weapon cutting through flesh. Whoosh, Mo disappeared into thin air, then suddenly reappeared. His large hand reached out to grab the blade of the long sword, but the spear in his hand had disappeared. While Mo and the black dragon Li Nanxuan were engaged in a life-and-death battle, Fang Yan and the divine dragon Li Nanxuan were not idle either. After the previous exchange, they could be considered a pair of opponents who knew each other well. But this understanding was one-sided and narrow. Fang Yan did not know how many magical treasures and ultimate moves the divine dragon Li Nanxuan had cultivated for decades. Similarly, the divine dragon Li Nanxuan did not know what kind of power the young genius who had just entered the water overflow realm would explode with. In any case, there was an unbreakable truth in the realm of martial arts. The fist fears the youth. While the others were fighting each other, Yi Rou and Gong Sun Qi seemed a little out of place with the atmosphere. Yi Rou glanced at Gong Sun Qi and had the urge to give it a try. She said expressionlessly, "Let's try too." While the others were fighting to the death, only the heavenly Dao realm Yi Rou was watching idly from the side. She was tempted by the sight of the skill and wanted to give it a try. Unfortunately, the experts had all been snatched away by Fang Yan and Mo. She only had Gong Sun Qi, a nobody, to choose from. Even if he was a nobody, he was still an opponent. She had nothing to do anyway, and now was not the time to be picky. "I will definitely not fight you." Gong Sun Qi secretly swallowed a mouthful of saliva and rejected coldly. "Fang Yan and I are brothers. You and Fang Yan are about to get married, which makes you my future sister-in-law. How can I attack my sister-in-law?" Chapter 848. A good man didn't fight with a woman. Smart men were the same. Gong Sun Qi wasn't stupid. How could he fight to the death with Yi Rou, who was at the heavenly Dao realm? No, if he did that, he would only be beaten to death by Yi Rou. Now he was especially glad that he had reconciled with Fang Yan, and that they had been friends for a period of time. Although their friendship started with his disgraceful image, he knew that they would definitely be in the same boat through thick and thin together for a long time. For example, now he would never attack his brother's girlfriend. Even if she stood at the side and insulted him time and time again. Gong Sun Qi could tell that Yi Rou looked at him with displeasure. He wanted to beat him up. "You really don't want to fight?" Yi Rou was a little disappointed. They were in a heated battle, but her challenge was given the cold shoulder. However, Gong Sun Qi didn't dare to accept the challenge. She couldn't fight alone. She couldn't just let him stand there and beat him to death, right? That wouldn't be a battle but a torture. "I really don't want to fight," Gong Sun Qi said with a serious face. "Fang Yan is now challenging one of the 3 dragons of Wuxia, the divine dragon. You can imagine how much psychological pressure he is under. At this most dangerous and critical moment, if I were to fight with his wife, wouldn't it affect his state of mind? I will never do such a thing. Otherwise, how can I be his brother in the future?" Yi Rou looked at Gong Sun Qi in surprise and asked, "You are possessed by Fang Yan? If you want to fight, that's fine. I will stand here and let you fight. You can kill me or cut me up. I won't fight back no matter what," Gong Sun Qi said heroically. Yi Rou nodded and said, "You are indeed possessed by Fang Yan." Kacha Fang Yan's body crashed into a 100-year-old pine tree. The branches of the tree couldn't bear his weight and cracked from the middle, producing a cracking sound. Because the big pine tree grew on the edge of the cliff after the impact, the roots of the big pine tree began to uproot from the ground, and the whole tree head also tilted towards the bottom of the cliff. Fang Yan leaned against the tree trunk, which had countless cracks on it, and panted heavily. Rustling sounds came from the tree. It was the sound of the broken stones falling down the cliff. If Fang Yan had been careless just now, he would have been swept off the cliff by the demon-slaying sword in the dragon god's hands. At that time only death would await them. The hot blood in his body was boiling, and the qi that flowed back violently ran amok in his meridians. Finally it was dispelled and suppressed by Fang Yan's lousy heart-cleansing mantra. He waited until his breathing returned to normal before he pushed off from the pine tree that was about to fall off the cliff. Hiss! The uprooting of the tree roots became more intense. Then with a loud rumble the entire pine tree was uprooted and fell off the cliff. Fang Yan's body landed on a square rock, and once again he faced the dragon god who was standing with the sword. What was the name of that sentence? Fang Yan asked. Samsara, answered the dragon god with much difficulty. Samsara. Good name. Fang Yan praised, go and come back, go and come back. The blade has gone and the sword has returned. If it wasn't for the heart of Tai Chi's timely warning and quick response, I'm afraid I would have been cut in half by your sword will. The heart of Tai Chi is an ultimate Taoist technique, and there are too many things that make people envious. With a sword in hand the world is mine. What else in this world can make Mr. Dragon God envious? Yes. The Dragon God answered without hesitation. For example, the heart of Tai Chi in a young body. This body of mine is too old, so old that it can no longer bear the responsibilities it should have. Fang Yan smiled and said, everyone will grow old. Yes. That being said, the Dragon God's face was full of regret as he said, but I'm old and you're still young. The Dragon God was also injured. Other than the injury that Fang Yan used to pierce through his back with half of the Tai Chi light, there were a few more wounds on his chest. His gray robe was messy and the hem of his clothes was torn. His hair was originally tied up by a black band, but now the band was gone. His hair danced in the night wind and he looked like an old ghost. Anyone who looked like an immortal would become like this after experiencing a fierce battle. I can't do anything about that. Fang Yan shrugged and said with a smile. He looked at the dragon god and said, previously I wanted to avenge the old drunkard, so I wanted to challenge you and defeat you. Now that the old drunkard is back, he can do what I want to do. So now I just want to challenge you and defeat you. Because of what? Because you're a master worthy of respect. Fang Yan said in a low voice. Thank you. The dragon god looked at Fang Yan sincerely and said, you're the most talented young man I've seen in so many years, and the one I look forward to the most. Even though you've achieved such results at your age and reached the water overflow state that countless people dream of, I still want to tell you that this is just the beginning. I think you can go very, very far, to a place that we've never seen before and that no one has ever walked before. If I'm not here by then, please tell me about it in front of my grave. I don't drink, so don't bring any wine. Bring a pot of tea, preferably biluakun. I'll drink tea while listening to you talk about the mysterious scenery of that world. It's also a pleasure for the eyes. After a pause, the dragon god looked at Fang Yan and said, I know you're ready. So from now on, use all your power to defeat me. I'll do my best. Fang Yan said in a low voice. Fang Yan's feet left the boulder and his body slowly drifted upward. His body floated in midair, and then he stretched out his arms, assuming the posture of lifting clothes while walking in Tai Chi. Fang Yan closed his eyes, and the heart of Tai Chi in his body began to spin frantically. This time the transparent crystal core began to rotate and it slowly rotated. It was like the movement of the sun and it would only move after a few seconds. However, only those who were familiar with the core would know that this speed of movement was much faster than when it was spinning frantically and not moving at all. When it was stationary, it was so fast that it was hard to see with the naked eye, and when it started to spin again, it was so fast that it could be seen with the naked eye. From being seen with the naked eye to being seen with the naked eye, it was a long and tortuous process in between. There were countless people who could not reach this step in their entire lives. In the words of the dragon god, every breakthrough was like an unknown scenery to them. He had seen some of the scenery and Fang Yan would see it too. However, there were some scenery that only Fang Yan would be able to see. Energy began to spin around Fang Yan's body. No, it should be said that he stirred up the airflow in the air. The surrounding air gathered around him and then revolved around the rhythm of his Tai Chi core. The air was everywhere, the fallen leaves on the ground, the rocks, the uprooted weeds and small trees and even the moist soil. They gathered towards Fang Yan in the air, and then revolved around him, wrapping him up layer by layer. Fang Yan became a big Easter egg, and until the last moment of the movie, no one would be able to see his real body. The Easter egg spun faster and faster and also became bigger and bigger. At a glance, it looked like an alien flying saucer that had just landed from the sky, and had not yet had the time to descend. The flying saucer paused in the air for a moment, and then charged towards the dragon god not far away. Heaven and earth lived together. How magnificent! The dragon god cheered and then charged towards the flying saucer with his sword. The demon-slaying sword in his hand let out a buzzing sound, and then flames appeared. It thrust its sword straight at the front of the flying saucer. One sword became 2 swords became 4 swords swords became 8 swords, then dozens of swords, hundreds of swords, thousands of swords, densely packed sword shadows, and the entire flying saucer seemed to be enveloped by the demon-slayer sword. The countless demon-slaying swords were like countless harvesters, harvesting the flying saucer layer by layer. Layer by layer, the outer skin of the Easter egg was torn off by the demon-slaying sword, like an onion being peeled layer by layer. The tip of the sword in the middle stabbed straight into the heart of the onion, and it was determined to stab Fang Yan, who was hidden in the center of the Easter egg, to death. The outer skin was cut off by the sword chi, and then it once again surrounded Fang Yan, who was like a magnet. Whoosh! They surged in from all directions, wrapping around the dragon god who was trying to stab into the heart of the Easter egg. Crack! When the eggs were closed, the lives of Fang Yan and the dragon god, who were sandwiched in between, looked like a double yolk egg. Everyone could feel the violent energy inside the egg, as well as the biting, cold, killing intent that could soar into the sky at any time. Bang! The Easter egg suddenly exploded. The air, the leaves, the weeds, the sand, the stones, the soil, they were like the raw materials for a bomb flying in all directions. Yi Ro, who was watching the battle from afar, was blown back a few steps by the shockwave of the explosion. Gong Sun Chi took a dozen steps back before he could stabilize himself. If he hadn't used the 1,000 catty fall several times in a row, his body would have been blown off the cliff. From this, it could be seen how terrifying the force of the explosion was. What would be the fate of the 2 people in the core of the explosion? Whoosh! A dark figure flew out of the egg. He held a long sword in his hand and flew towards a protruding boulder. However, Fang Yan was nowhere to be found. The dragon god struggled to stand on the big rock, silently pondering. After a long time, he sighed softly and hissed, "I've lost." Chapter 849. Each generation had its own geniuses, each leading for centuries. This was fate. The divine dragon's bitter life was once a legend of an era, a star in the sky, an unreachable existence. However, his era was coming to an end, just like how he once ended the azure dragon Mo Qingdi, who entered the heavenly axiom before him. However, he did not expect that today would be the day of his end, and that the person who ended him would be Mo Qingdi's junior brother Fang Yan, whom he had once ended. He ended Mo Qingdi for his junior brother, and in the end he was ended by Mo Qingdi's junior brother. Was this not fate? "I've lost," the divine dragon said in a low voice. How solemn was this sentence? He admitted his failure and the end of his era with his own mouth. When he said this, the old god was dead and a new god was to be established. Wuxia, another martial arts star, rose. The moment she appeared, she shocked the world with her dazzling display. Fang Yan of the water overflow state defeated the heavenly axiom state bitter life, and a new dragon was born. "Master!" Gong Sun Chi screamed. He had always disapproved of this battle because he did not want Fang Yan to be injured or Fang Yan to die. Yes, in his heart the master's bitter life was the most powerful existence. Fang Yan, who had just entered the water overflow state, was no match for him. If this battle was carried out, the only outcome would be Fang Yan's defeat. What he did not expect was that the person who lost was his own master. How could the person who was like a god in his heart lose? How could he lose to Fang Yan? All sorts of feelings welled up in his heart. It was as if something was stuck in his heart, so oppressive that he could not breathe, causing him to be unable to say a word. The divine dragon nodded at Gong Sun Chi and said with a smile, "Victory and defeat are common in war. Why do you have to act like a little girl? I'm old and I've lost. That's why young people like you should work harder." Gong Sun Chi straightened his back and said in a clear voice, "This disciple will follow master's instructions." Yuro didn't expect the battle to end so quickly. She also didn't expect the divine dragon to say that he had lost after jumping out of the Easter egg. Even with her cultivation and eyesight, she couldn't see through everything. However, she liked the honesty of the dragon god's hard work. She still did not like the dragon god, but her impression of him had changed. She cupped her fists at the dragon god. It was a way for martial artists to show their respect. Fang Yan appeared. He appeared behind the position where the dragon god was struggling to stand. "Thank you, Mr. Dragon God." Fang Yan was equally apologetic and said gratefully, "I didn't. This kind of thing cannot be allowed to happen." The divine dragon tried his best to correct Fang Yan's mistake with a serious expression. He asked, "What's the name of that move?" "Flooding Jinshan," Fang Yan said aloud. "Flooding Jinshan, what a good name." The dragon god smiled and asked, "Did you name it yourself?" "I named it myself. I know your family has a long history of learning. It's a good thing to read more. Only by reading more can you gain knowledge, and only with knowledge can you get a good name. Otherwise, our martial arts heritage would be left with names like Black Bull leaning on Black Tiger digging heart, and Lazy Donkey rolling around. How would we have the face to meet our martial arts predecessors?" The dragon god said emotionally, "It's not an injustice that I lost to your flooding Jinshan this time. I originally thought that your real body was inside the Jinshan, but you used to camouflage on me. You still stayed outside the Jinshan and only I was wrapped up by Shuizhang. My sword also missed. When I missed my strike, you already had the chance to win in one strike. Unfortunately, you didn't do anything. So I lost." The dragon god looked at Fang Yan sincerely and said, "I lost wholeheartedly. Your character and bearing are far better than ordinary people." Fang Yan bowed slightly and said, "You flatter me, Mr. Dragon God." The dragon god looked at Fang Yan with a gratified expression and said, "With a younger generation, martial arts is not lonely. Gongsun Chi, you have such an excellent companion. This is the best thing in your life. You will understand in the future. You should learn from Fang Yan and break through as soon as possible." "Yes, master." Gongsun Chi replied respectfully. The dragon god did not even look at Black Dragon Li Nanxuan and Green Dragon Mo Qingdi. His eyes were calm and gentle as he looked at Fang Yan. He sighed softly and said, "It's said that fists and feet have no eyes, but after all, it's still the nature of one's heart. In the past I didn't think I did anything wrong. But today your behavior has made me feel ashamed." A green light flashed, and the divine dragon's struggling body was scanned from top to bottom by that green light. His body trembled violently and then he fell to the ground on his butt. "This body's cultivation base has been crippled, and from now on I am a commoner." The dragon god looked at Fang Yan and said, "I will pay back the debt I owe." "Mr. Dragon God." Fang Yan panicked and rushed over to help the dragon god up from the ground. "You don't have to do this." The dragon god shook his head and his rosy cheeks instantly aged. Without that energy and spiritual support, he was just an old man over 70 years of age. "If I don't do this, I won't be able to calm my mind." The dragon god grinned. "You know what kind of danger a heavenly Tao expert will encounter when they find it hard to calm their mind. I've been glorious, I've existed, and there are legends about me everywhere. Life is full of different forms, and every kind of life should be enjoyed at least once. I'm old now. Wouldn't it be more interesting to go back to plow the fields and grow vegetables?" Fang Yan was stunned for a while, and was deeply impressed by the dragon god's breadth of mind. He said, "Then I'll be a vegetable thief. Mr. Dragon God, you must take good care of the courtyard." "Ah, welcome. Welcome." The dragon god patted Fang Yan's shoulder with great effort and laughed out loud. "Master." Gongsun Chi's eyes were red as he knelt beside the dragon god. His tears were about to fall. He never thought that his master's way of doing things would be so extreme. Besides, Fang Yan's family had 3 heavenly Tao, and the only heavenly Tao expert on his side had crippled his martial arts. What if Fang Yan bullied him in the future? His woman had already begun to bully him. "Gongsun Chi, help me up." The dragon god said with great effort. With the help of Fang Yan and Gongsun Chi, the dragon god was helped up from the ground with great effort. "Let's go." The dragon god waved his hand and said, "Let's go back and plant vegetables." "Yes, master." The master and disciples' figures walked away, but Fang Yan still did not regain his senses. "He's an admirable old man. Yi Rou stood behind Fang Yan and said aloud. Yes. In fact, he doesn't have to do this. Fang Yan sighed. Fang Yan suddenly turned around and hugged Yi Rou in his arms. He used all his strength as if he wanted to rub her body into his own. We can get married. Fang Yan said excitedly in Yi Rou's ear. You don't have to be a widow anymore. I never planned to be a widow. Yi Rou said. What do you mean? If he wants to kill you, I will kill him. Yi Rou said calmly. This is the final battle. I don't care if this is the final battle. Then my reputation will be ruined. I can kill all the people on this place. Fang Yan secretly felt lucky for Gong Sun Chi. If Yi Rou killed him first, he probably would not have much power to fight back. A woman's heart was unfathomable. It was really unfathomable. The transparent puppy glanced at Fang Yan and Yi Rou, who were hugging each other, and spat a mouthful of saliva at Fang Yan. I'm hugging my wife, do you have a problem with that? Fang Yan glared at him unhappily. The transparent puppy spat at Fang Yan again, then ran to Yi Rou's pants with its mouth, signaling her to stay away from Fang Yan and not to hug him. How dare you steal my woman? Fang Yan was furious. He rolled up his sleeves and was about to fight with the transparent puppy. Mo Qingdi's spear was not fast, but each spear was like a thunderbolt, making it very difficult for people to deal with. At their level, the choice of weapon was not important. Just like how Fang Yan could defeat the dragon god with his demon-slaying sword, it was the same principle. They were playing with their state of mind. When your reaction speed could not keep up with your state of mind, you had no chance of fighting back when faced with a massacre. However, Mo Qingdi still subconsciously felt that it was best not to let Mo Qingdi hold a spear. He knew this was a dangerous way of thinking because he was afraid. The more he feared, the more likely he was to fail. Fear was a demon in the heart. When the demon took control of your heart, it would be difficult for you to display your true strength. Mo Qingdi had been hailed as the best spear in the world 20 years ago. The silver spear in his hand was like a god descending to the mortal world, almost unstoppable. Dark Dragon Li Nanxuan had wanted to intercept and kill him on the way over the Tai Chi diagram, but he had not expected to be stabbed in the face. Dark Dragon Li Nanxuan burned with rage when he remembered the gaping hole in his face. It was a scar, a humiliation. Even though Mo Qingdi's tendons had been broken by his junior, the dragon god, and he had become a cripple, it was still difficult to dispel the ferocity in his heart. Dark Dragon's body sprinted towards Mo Qingdi. With each step he took, an afterimage appeared in the air. By the time he was one step away from Mo Qingdi, the air was already filled with the shadows of dark dragons, as if there were countless black robes fighting with Mo Qingdi. His real body was at the forefront, the long sword in his hand emitting a faint buzzing sound like that of insects. Old drunkard Mo Qingdi's eyes were solemn, then he thrust his spear at an illusory figure on his left. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.